Namaste and greetings. I, Dr. Sauravi Himire, Research and Communication Associate at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan, Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. We are gathered today for day 2 of a 3-day online certificate program on implementing rainwater conservation, practitioners' perspectives on rainwater harvesting and efficient local water governance and resilience. This training course is organized by National Institute of Disaster Management, NIDM, Ministry of Home Affairs, and Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development, or CECCSD, IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi. The patron for the program is Shri Taj Hassan, IPS Executive Director, NIDM, New Delhi. Our convener and moderator is Shri Tikendra Singh Panwar, former Deputy Mayor, Shimla, Senior Fellow, IMPRI. Our conveners are Professor Anil K. Gupta, Head of ECD RM, NIDM, New Delhi, Dr. Simi Mehta, CEO and Editorial Director, IMPRI, and Dr. Somyadeep Chattopadhyay, Associate Professor, Vishwabharati Shantiniketan, Visiting Senior Fellow, IMPRI, New Delhi. This course will be conducted by various expert resource persons comprising eminent academicians, journalists, senior researchers, and policy practitioners. The distinguished resource persons have great experience gained in the field along with their expertise. Our experts for today's training sessions are Dr. Fawzia Tarano, Ms. Anjali Makhija, and Dr. Brajesh Kumar Dubey. Our organizing team consists of Dr. Sweta Bedyadas, NIDM, Dr. Sauravi Himire, Utkarsh Dwivedi, and Dia Goswami, IMPRI. This 3-day online training program intends to bring together professionals from academia, civic society, and the business and entrepreneurial sectors to begin a critical conversations about our times. The ultimate purpose of this program is to develop a group of practitioners for mainstreaming sustainable and affordable rainwater harvesting in urban India. We are very grateful to the NIDM team and particularly Professor Anil K. Gupta and his team, and Tikendra Panwarji for spearheading this timely training course on the topic of rainwater harvesting and local governance. I welcome all of you for this enlightening deliberation and thank you for being interested and putting your time, energy, and efforts in understanding emerging issues concerning the impacts of policies in disaster management and helping us to bring together the practitioners and participants through this course, which we believe will lead to a very fruitful outcome. Before we start today's session, I would like to remind the housekeeping announcements once again. Please join the meeting on time. There will be Q&A session after each presentation. Share your question on the Q&A box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee and ensure that the questions are precise. Kindly refrain from making general comments in the questions in order to save time. Now, I would like to welcome Shri Tikendra Singh Panwarji, our course moderator and convener, to share some words before we begin with our expert sessions. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Sauravi. What I intend to do is, because the topic has already been contextualized yesterday, and we've already had 3 presentations. So what I intend to do is, I want to reserve my comments for the when we finish off today's presentations, and of course also looking at the Q&As, so that I just am a little more inquisitive, just to because it's already been contextualized. I don't think that I have to just lay the context again. So let's go ahead with our experts, hear them out, and then probably when we finish off with our today's presentations, Q&As, discussions, that's when I would like to intervene and then probably take it again tomorrow. So, yeah.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. Our first distinguished expert for this session is Dr. Fawzia Tarano. Dr. Tarano is the Assistant Professor, Department of Regional Water Studies, TERI, School of Advanced Studies, TERI, SAS, New Delhi. We welcome you, ma'am, to the program. Please take over the session.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And many thanks, Dr. Gimere, for the introduction. And thank you, IMPRI, NIDM, Ministry of Home Affairs, and all partnering institutions for inviting me for today's session. So I'll just share my screen and quickly start. So I think yesterday I had a chance to really sit through in bits and pieces the sessions that were being taken, and I think a lot of things has already been covered around policy, and also, in fact, to some extent around grassroots initiatives which are there in rainwater harvesting. So what I will try to do is I'll try to sort of give a little orientation towards what could possibly be the design, share some case studies around it, what people are doing around over India, and what could possibly be the way forward. So first of all, I think yesterday this was mentioned about the traditional water structures, the rich traditional water structures. So what we are talking today, that is rainwater harvesting, is not new to India. And hence, honestly speaking, we really don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have had a very rich culture of rainwater harvesting. In fact, people used to settle, where there used to be water, and they were the custodians of water bodies. And all our, I would say, forts, all our religious places, everything, all our villages, perhaps everywhere, we had ponds, lakes, small rainwater harvesting structures, tanks, cascaded tanks. And I think many such examples are there around rainwater harvesting in India. So why are we even talking about rainwater harvesting? Why should we even think of doing this? So Niti Aayog, when they came out with their report, the Composite Water Index report in 2018, they have very clearly brought out that if with business as usual, by 2030, the demand would be twice the supply, and cities are going to run out of water very soon. 6% of GDP will be lost by 2050 due to water crisis. And if we look at the per capita water availability, it is declining every year. And India, on an average, is definitely a water-stressed country. Some places, of course, we are water scarce country also, just to put in perspective that a country is said to be water scarce when the per capita water availability goes below 1,000 meter cube per year, and water stressed if it goes below 1,700 cubic meter per year. This is a picture of Vasant Kunj in Delhi. It's from South Delhi. And while we are talking about Har Ghar Jal Pe Nal, but the crisis of water still continues. India, of course, is under extremely high water stress. While our average water or average rainfall is slightly higher than the global average, but the spatial and temporal variability, and now with climate change, we see a lot of variation in the weather pattern. So more intense rainfall is happening. So in the process, with limited storage capacity available, India is definitely under tremendous water stress. And this water stress is not just the problem of quantity of water available, but it's also the problem of quality. So we have a large number of habitations which have fluoride, arsenic, iron, nitrate, salinity across India. If you look at the arsenic contamination in India, these red dots that you see in the map here, actually 20 states and 4 union territories are already affected by arsenic in India. And hence, the crisis is even more. Our overdependence on groundwater, so most of our blocks are now critically, either in a critical condition or overexploited condition, and our dependence on irrigated agriculture, on groundwater is almost about 60%. In rural areas, it is 85% for the drinking water supplies. So I was in Bihar just about a week ago doing a training program for PhD engineers who are responsible for this Har Ghar Jal Pe Nal program there. And most of the source that is there for providing water on tap is groundwater. And hence, we are seeing fast depletion of our groundwater, and not much effort has gone into source sustainability. While the document talks about it, but that is something that is definitely missing. And if current trend continues in 20 years, about 60% of all India's aquifers will be in critical condition. Along with that, there is also a tanker mafia that we see perpetuating all over. This is a case study from Latur. And the cost of pumping 6,000 liters of water from a borewell in a rural area is around 50 rupees. But when that goes and gets sold in a city, it actually goes up to almost 800 per trip. Excuse me for I am really sorry for this interruption. So around 600 tankers of different capacities are operating in Latur city, and that's exactly what we see in most cities across India. So, and this is something of Chennai that we see, that how from 1980 to 2010, things have completely changed. So you see that most of the water bodies have got lost, and that perhaps is the reason why Chennai faced very severe water scarcity or near day zero when there was in 2015 they had severe floods. Urban flooding is a very common phenomena. Urban flooding causes are primarily climate change, urbanization, and poor urban planning. So there is a heavy rainfall, frequent precipitation extremes, more residential and commercial buildings with concrete structures, improper and appropriate drainage system, construction and development of floodplains, increased impervious surface areas leading to water runoff, and lack of natural flood storage ponds. So this is something that, it's a common sight in Delhi that we see in most monsoons. Now, what's happening is most of our pervious layers are vanishing, and they are being replaced by concrete surfaces. So the infiltration rate that we look at when we have green cover, almost about 50% of it, of the water actually infiltrates. But when we have impervious layer, we have only around 5% deep infiltration. So how are we going to do this? We are looking at rainwater harvesting technique today, and that's the topic that we are discussing. I'm sure all of you are familiar with it. It's all about storing rainwater. It could be from the roof, from the parks, roads, open grounds, and then whether you could store it on the surface or you could recharge the groundwater. The catchment that we have could be, as I said, it could be roof, it could be road, it could be playground, it could be park, or it could be any paved area. So now criteria that is used to determine the suitability of water harvesting sites and techniques. So can we do it anywhere and everywhere? So so one is, of course, the soil type. So which soil has more permeability? So we have medium textured loamy soils are best. Otherwise, all which are suitable for agriculture, for instance. And if we are going for percolation tanks, then sandy soils. If you're looking at ponds, then clay soils, which has low infiltration. Likewise, slope again becomes very important. We go for contour trenches for recharging if the slope is steep, and we go for small basins if it is gentle. Land use, land cover. Land use should preferably be barren, scrubland, or bare soil. Drainage pattern, again, where the drainage is highest, or runoff generation is high, it's better to have a rainwater structure there. Soil categorization, group A, B, C, and D. So group A soil have low runoff potential and high infiltration rates, even though they're thoroughly wetted. And these are mostly your sandy, loamy soil that is there. Group B soil, again, have moderate infiltration. Then we have group C soil, which is more of clayey soil, which has little higher proportion, and that's why they have low infiltration rate. And then we have group D soil, which have high runoff potential. And again, you know, these are very high on the clay content that is there. So if you're looking at rainwater harvesting and artificial recharge, depending on the terrain, then hilly and mountainous area, preferably you can have contour trenches, percolation tanks. If there are already existing recharge structures, we can look at reviving those. We can have Gabien structures to slow down the flow of water and recharge. If you're looking at alluvial area, then preferably percolation tanks and recharge pits. Hard rock area, we have recharge through abandoned dug wells, tube wells, modification of village tanks as recharge structure, and Gabien structure, percolation tank. So these are more suited for it. I'll show you a small video here, which would give you a little insight into the two videos I'll show you. This is by Hindran Engineering, and they're working in Bangalore. Sorry.
Hi. This is a rainwater harvesting setup at an individual house located in Bangalore. This is the catchment area. This is painted white to increase the runoff. Painting it white also helps to keep the roof cool. The solar panels makes an excellent catchment as well. This is the first flush or a first drain separator. This is a plumbing arrangement to segregate the first few minutes of water. When the valve is open, the water is drained out. When you close the valve, water builds up in the water column and goes into the filter. This is a modified rapid sand filter consisting of silex, activated carbon, and cinder. The water filters through the filter media and gets into the storage unit. It's very important to keep the filter clean. It is recommended that the filter is cleaned at least thrice a year. This is the underground sump where the filtered water is stored. This is used for all purposes, including drinking. It's also important to keep the sump clean. In the case that the sump overflows, excess water is drained into a recharge well. This is a 3 feet in diameter and 20 feet deep recharge well. The water here augments the shallow aquifer and recharges the groundwater. Thank you.
So this is Hindran Engineering. They are actually working in Bangalore and are actually doing large number of structures in Bangalore. I'll also show you one more climate reality project, which is also into doing rainwater harvesting. Just give me a second. I'm sorry about this. So this is another one. So Climate Reality India project again has taken large number of rainwater harvesting work, and this is a project that they are doing in Pune, and they are being supported by ICICI Bank. This work actually they are doing in 100 villages in Pune district. So I'll briefly show this project. In fact, I was there. Since I'm a climate reality leader, I had a chance to be there.
रेन वाटर कलेक्टिंग गटर, जिसको लोकल लैंग्वेज में पनाली बोलते हैं, इसमें हम कलेक्ट करते हैं। और ये पानी यहाँ से कलेक्ट कर करके जो आता है ऊपर से, ये पानी यहाँ से एक फिल्टर है छोटा, ये फिल्टर हम लोगों ने डिजाइन किया हुआ फिल्टर है, ताकि ये फिल्टर से ये पानी साफ हो करके, इस फिल्टर का काम ये होता है कि छत के ऊपर, यहाँ पे देखो पेड़ है, ऊपर पेड़ है, पेड़ के पत्ते गिरते हैं, टहनियाँ छोटी छोटी तिनके होते हैं, बर्ड के ड्रॉपिंग्स होते हैं, ये सारे इसमें, ताकि हमारे बोर में ना जाए, क्योंकि बोर का डायमीटर 6 इंच का होता है, वो नीचे जाके खराब ना हो जाए, ब्लॉक ना हो जाए, इसलिए ये लगाते हैं। अभी यहाँ से साफ सुथरा पानी हम बोर को कनेक्ट कर देते हैं, तो थोड़ा थोड़ा स्लोप दे करके ये पानी, अभी आप आ जाइए, अभी ये पानी वहां से लेके आए और ये पानी अभी पहले तो ऊपर आता, थोड़ी देर की। अभी ये जो बोरवेल है, बोरवेल का जो केसिंग का पाइप है, उसमें हम इसको छेद बना देते हैं। अभी ये पाइप उसके साथ कनेक्ट हो जाती है, ताकि छत का पानी अभी साफ फिल्टर हो करके सीधा बोर के थ्रू नीचे जो झरना है, जिसको अंग्रेजी में एक्वीफर बोलते हैं, उस एक्वीफर में सीधा पहुंच जाता है। और ओवर ए पीरियड ऑफ टाइम आहिस्ता आहिस्ता पानी की जो लेवल है ग्राउंड वाटर की, भूजल की मात्रा फिर बढ़ने लगती है। ये साधा सोपा और कोई भी आदमी कर सकता है, ये रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग का प्रकार है।
Right. So I think you saw just now had a chance to see two videos. So in the first one that we saw, it is again, the rooftop is your catchment. And then from there, the water is being taken to a filtration media. There is, of course, you need to do a first flush. That's very important. So I think yesterday there was a question on water quality, like how good is rainwater for consumption. So it's very important that when you are doing rainwater harvesting, you go for first flush. So whatever water that falls in your rainwater harvesting structure, you have a Y joint where you actually create a first flush and you remove that water, and then you take the water into your you can directly take it to the bore well or the recharge well, or to a dug well. But if you are looking at consuming it for potable uses, then you need to really do some amount of filtration of that water, and then it is perfectly I think can be used for drinking purposes. So as you saw it in the first video, in the second video here, what they're doing is, since the roof in the rural area is not concrete, so they try to put a channel there, and through that channel they take the water, and through the hand pump or the bore well that exists in the village, it is then being sent for recharging the groundwater. Now, what is the rainwater harvesting potential? Normally, you would say the harvesting potential would be the rainfall, which is there in millimeter and the area. So, but here we also have something called runoff coefficient, because different surfaces have different runoff coefficients. So if you're looking at, for instance, a concrete roof, then it has a runoff coefficient of 0.8. But if you're looking at, for instance, a park or an open area, then the runoff coefficient, of course, is very less. It ranges from 0.15 to 0.13. So here, so we have got 200 meters square, and you can convert this from millimeter to meter, then you will get your total water in meter cube. So I have not converted it. So I have taken this in the unit liters and multiplied it. Now for a family of 5, if you're having a 600 millimeter rainfall and you have a rooftop of 200 meters square, then roughly about 96,000 liters of water can be harvested. Now, if you're looking at 135 liters per day of consumption per person, then your total consumption would come roughly about 675 liters per day. So number of days for which you can use this water is roughly about 142 days. But if this water you want to use only for drinking purpose, then perhaps it would suffice for the entire year also. So there is a RWH manual of CPWD. It has been there since 2002. It's almost around the same time that we brought in the bylaws for rainwater harvesting. So actually speaking, we have a very strict bylaws which are there for rainwater harvesting, that if you have a rooftop area ranging from 50 square meter in some cities to 100 square meter in others, rainwater harvesting becomes mandatory. Most of the apartment buildings which are new, of course, for them, it is definitely important to get a clearance that you need to have a rainwater harvesting structure. So then where does the problem lie? So maybe we will just discuss that. We'll discuss that in a minute. So then moving on to what are the different kinds of structures that we have. You could have a percolation tank. This is the most common runoff harvesting structures in India. Many societies also, or residents welfare association, they go for percolation tanks. Percolation tanks are also common in rural areas, these are artificially created surface water body submerging a high permeable land area so that the surface runoff can percolate and recharge the groundwater. It doesn't have a sluice gate or something, so the water just is meant for actually percolating and recharging the groundwater. You can have a recharge trench. So recharge trench could either be used for actually recharging the water from the rooftop also, but also from open areas. So for instance, if you have a pavement or if you have water from the road, that can be directed towards the recharge trench. And the recharge trench actually has layers of sand, pebbles, stones, so that the water can actually be filtered before it is recharged into the groundwater. This is another example of a recharge trench, which is in the periphery of the residence. And here again, you have the water from the rooftop that can be taken to the recharge trench and can be recharged. Then these are some pictures of ponds and trenches. These I have taken from the National Water Mission website because they have been working a lot on Catch the Rain. So these are farm ponds and duck pond, percolation tank. You can see here trenches. As I said, that if there is a hilly terrain, then contour trenches or water absorption trenches are best. In fact, in Rajasthan, in Laporia, they are doing small what they call chalkers or trenches, which are cascaded. Something, trying to sort of make it pretty similar to the cascaded tanks, which we have in Telangana and that region, but for recharging of groundwater. You could also use recharge through bore wells, tube wells. Abandoned bore wells can be used, abandoned dug wells can be used. So every village, I think once upon a time had a dug well, and they were totally dependent on the dug well. But now when I see most of these dug wells and ponds are being used for throwing solid waste. So if that can be cleared, then through a filtration medium, it's always good to use a filtration medium, because that way, what you're putting it in the ground is at least clean water that is going. Always be mindful that India has got lots of aquifers which are already contaminated with arsenic or fluoride or iron. So it's always good to check the groundwater quality prior to recharging the groundwater. It should not so happen that a good quality water is taken and then put into the groundwater. Gabien structure, again, is a very important way of holding water or slowing down the water, especially in hilly terrain. You can actually use small Gabien structure. So you use a wire mesh. So you don't really make a wall kind of a thing, but a concrete wall, but you use a wire mesh, and then you use boulders, you tie them in that wire mesh, and then when the water flows along the contour, it slows down and gradually it infiltrates and percolates into the groundwater. So that's another way of doing it. These Gabien structures, you can also make it from construction and demolition debris. So I'll show you a little small structure, a check dam kind of a thing that has been made in Sikandarpur forest in Gurgaon using the construction and demolition debris. But that's again, you know, rather than mining and quarrying and taking out stones and then making it, construction and demolition debris actually works well with the Gabien structure. Then you could also think of going for rain gardens. So that's another good way of looking at having an aesthetic look, but at the same time being able to recharge the groundwater. So these are again 6 to 9 inches deep, and these are depression, again filled with compost and gravel that filters, and these are native plants which are planted so that they are able to they act as a habitat also for the birds, butterflies, pollinators that are there, but at the same time their roots can be used for treating the water or cleaning the water before it gets so like a filter medium, it can be used before it goes and recharges the groundwater. So here, if you look at this, you can see that this is kind of a small marshy area that is there, but that has been transformed, and this aesthetic look that comes when you have a rain garden. Bioswales is Bioswales is another way you can actually look at again creating infrastructure along the roadside. So bioswales are normally shallower than your rain garden, and they actually are passageways, so they run parallel to the roads. You can say that the sides of the roads are lowered slightly, and then you can have flora and fauna there. You could and it can be used for storing. It can be used for actually collecting the water that accumulates on the road and recharging of groundwater. This is again, you know, I just wanted to give you a little idea on the sponsity concept, which is there. So sponsity concept, of course, has been there for a few years now. China, of course, is working extensively on this. Does India really need sponsity? A lot of talk is being happening for urban water, you know, arresting the urban flooding problem that is there, or urban water management. We do keep talking a lot about sponsity. So whether we really require that, given that most of the cities in India, we talk of Delhi, we had almost 276 or something water bodies, or 250 water bodies have already been identified, though they are completely neglected, but we already have a lot of you know, capacity which is there to store water if they can be cleaned, and if we can really create channels to bring water to those open areas. Likewise, if I look at Gurgaon also, we have more than 450 such water bodies, Johors, which have been there, Bangalore, Hyderabad, many of the cities which are recently in the news because of urban flooding, perhaps already have a very rich traditional water harvesting system history. So it's only a matter of reviving those systems that is there. However, if there's a requirement, something like this can always be created. So you basically do, what you do is you revive the blue and the green spaces and ensure that very little water then actually goes in runoff. And of course, the ecosystem services that we talk about. So any such space, of course, provides ecosystem services, whether it is provisioning in terms of fresh water, food, regulating, climate regulation, flood and erosion reduction, water purification, culture, recreation, tourism, spirituality, and supporting habitat, which is there of creatures, aquatic biodiversity as well. So this little thing that we saw here, which was bioretention. So what is bioretention? So bioretention, again, you know, you create some kind of a layer of sandy, loamy, sand, carbon, co-sand, a filtration medium. So the rainwater comes here into the bioretention system, and then it goes through the filtering. It gets first first point of treatment is the roots of these plants, and then it goes through the filtration media, and then you can get treated rainwater from here, which can be used both for irrigation or for horticulture. It can be used. Now, Delhi, I'll just give a few case studies that I'll share. One is, of course, of Delhi that is there. So Delhi has been talking about rainwater harvesting for a while. They have been after RWAs to actually install rainwater harvesting structure. They have, in fact, they said that till about 2021, March 31st, 2021, there will be no penalty for 100 to 500 square meter plots if they don't have rainwater harvesting structure. But after that, penalty worth 50% of the total water bill on non-installation. The irony is that, most of us who live like 2 people or 3 people in a family, unfortunately, our total water requirement doesn't go to 20 kiloliters, and hence we are not even paying any bill. So unfortunately, even if you have penalty like these, how do you really implement, or are these really, any kind of incentivization for people to save water? So on installation, and they've also talked about 10% rebate on bills. So the question is, as it is, water is highly subsidized, unlike energy. So if anybody is paying a water bill of 200 rupees or 500 rupees, is 50 rupees or 20 rupees enough incentive to save water? The government has also spoken about providing assistance, financial assistance. That was another question that was there for installing of rainwater harvesting structure. But more than installation, the maintenance of rainwater harvesting structure has been a challenge. You go and survey in your respective colonies where you live, and believe you me, 90% of the rainwater harvesting, you will find they are non-functional. Most of the rainwater harvesting structures we looked at as part of Gurujal, which is under district administration of Gurgaon. In the Gurgaon district, the DLF flats and others, most of them were non-functional. A few of them who were functional also, the outlet was in the sewer drain. So that's even more criminal to do, that you take fresh water and you put it in the sewer system. So what points were raised by the RWAs was that technically it's not feasible because it's already built up area is there. They feel that there could be risk to the foundation. Sometimes there is co-ownership and multiple flats. So who pays and how will the subsidy get divided? And but RWAs are being pushed that they can install rainwater harvesting in common areas, in parks, in community halls. This is again a very good case study of Nizamuddin East, where they have been they have installed rainwater harvesting structure, and it has been working now for a few years. The technology and design that they have used is from the catchment areas of the colony, including roof, paved, unpaved area, that is conveyed and collected through stormwater drain in a collection chamber, which is covered with perforated slab and placed at a low-lying area so that water can flow into the collection chamber naturally. Rainwater from the collection chamber is then diverted to a recharge well, which is provided with a recharge bore with depth of 10 meter and the bore dia is 150 millimeters. And the recharge well is also provided with a filtration system, which includes pebbles, coarse sand to ensure proper filtration of the stormwater used for recharge. So the case study can be accessed. I've given the link to access the case study. Now, blue-green infrastructure is something that is becoming quite popular. So from gray to green to blue-green, because it's not just the blue, it's not just the water bodies that are repositories for water, but the forests also absorb, or the green spaces also absorb large amount of water. So this was one case study that I want to share with you, which we did for IIM Gurgaon, but for Gurgaon Metropolitan Development Authority. So this was for urban flooding. And we were given a small area of the golf course road from sector 52 to sector 21, and which had 4 creeks. So we did both a hydrological and geospatial study for that region. And we also did a lot of ground truthing. We walked across the road for the region which was given, and most of the creeks that were there, so that had 4 creeks, and all the creeks were actually filled with construction and demolition debris. You can see in the picture. So all of them were in a very bad shape, completely damaged, and all these ponds and catchments were pretty much, you know, in a very bad condition, and most of the solid waste were being dumped in that area. So finally, when we, after our study, we actually gave them some recommendations for all the creeks as to where they could really look at catchment basins. So in the upstream, a lot of catchment basins could be created where the water can be stopped in the upstream itself. And then, of course, we did talk about green corridor, creating green corridors. As I said, green corridors can actually be a good repository for water. And then rain gardens and recharge wells. So for all the creeks we had provided. There's been some work which was done. So this study we did in 2021, some efforts were actually done by the Gurgaon Metropolitan Development Authority. And we could see the results in the following monsoon when actually we had, you know, a little lesser flooding on the golf course road. This is another one which IIM Gurgaon had taken a project of eco-restoration in Sikandarpur, but we did an impact assessment for them for that study, and I would like to share a few pictures of that as well. So we have a large number of forests which are completely neglected, and they can again be a good place for rainwater harvesting. So this is roughly about 80 acres. I'll just show you a few pictures to get an idea that after cleaning what had happened. So if you look at 2019 picture that is there, you can see that this is like totally dumped with waste, and you can see animals moving here. But this is the picture from 2021, where you can see more vegetation in the vicinity of the rejuvenated pond. Here, it's completely, you can see there is eutrophication, the water hyacinth and plants which have been growing, and after cleaning, it looks like this. It's actually a work in progress. It's still, if you happen to go to Sikandarpur, Gurgaon, do visit the Sikandarpur forest, because it looks this is a very beautiful view, especially in monsoon. You will really enjoy seeing the water being directed towards the pond. So again, this is another thing that you can see the difference in how the pond was earlier there and how it is now. The greenery, you can also look at the vegetative cover that has grown. Here again, you can see the flowing channels which are there. Organic composting, they've made, I was talking to you about small check dams, you know, structures that they have created within that. So since there is a slope that is there to slow down the water for recharging, they've used the construction and demolition debris that they found within that forest to actually create these little check dams and gully plugs to ensure that more water gets recharged. Channels from road. So from the road, they have created these channels so the water can be redirected. Instead of accumulating on the road, it can be redirected into the forest. Drip irrigation is another thing that they have. And within the forest also, they have created natural channels to ensure that the water gets directed into the wetland areas. Pune Metro is also looking at, see, a lot of innovation is happening around rainwater harvesting, because the will to do has perhaps increased, and I think people are worried about the problem. So they are also looking at how water from the metro track can be redirected and actually can be sent to aquifers. Jal Shakti Abhiyan, again, you know, this term, catch the rain where it falls, when it falls. I'm sure all of you, again, who have joined us would be aware of it, that Government of India has been trying hard through the Jal Shakti Abhiyan since 2019 to ensure that we revive our traditional water structures. We install rainwater harvesting structures. We reuse structures which have been abandoned, watershed development program, and afforestation, everything that results into water saving. Management challenges. I just wanted to show you some of these pictures. Again, in Sohna, we had done a project. So these are of schools. This is of a civil hospital in Sohna. And if you can see the kind of debris that, or the kind of waste that has been dumped near to the rainwater harvesting structure. So how much ever you invest in these structures, whether it's pond rejuvenation or whether it is installing rainwater harvesting structure or percolation tanks or board wells management becomes very, very important. So you have to, if you don't service your car will become non-operational. So it's equipments in your house, just as you are worried and you do manage and maintain them, you should be worried about this as well. So you should organize awareness programs. You should see the policy of possibility of establishing neighborhood level systems so that few households can come together and have a common rainwater harvesting structure. Public places, open spaces, parks, roadsides, underpasses, flyovers, where we can do that. Data on rainwater harvesting systems and its functionality is really poor. So if we can work on really having the right, measuring the problem, because only then can we manage it better. And lastly, valuing water. So freebies that we are so used to, while water is being traded on the Wall Street alongside gold and oil, but we are still treating water. We must treat water as a social good, but we need to also give an appropriate value to the water. Otherwise, our situation soon is going to be like the thirsty crow. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tarano, for this very lively and interesting presentation of yours. Tikendra sir, if you would like to add some points to ma'am's presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Fawzia. It was really interesting to watch your presentation and to hear, kind of interventions that are happening. My, concern is that, you've also brought in the government paradigm that government is doing. Unfortunately, the crisis is further deepening. It's not getting addressed. And to me, I think what is also very important is the integration and the interdisciplinary nature of our developmental processes, particularly the city development process. And the kind of massive land use change that we are witnessing in the cities, where real estate is taking a pivotal position. Take, for example, Delhi Master Plan 2041. We talk about, definitely we require these resident welfare associations to be incentivized, to be promoted. Definitely. There is a very interesting work by Sutendra Biswas, the assorted city, particularly for Delhi. It's really a masterpiece for all those who are interested in understanding the nuances of water utility in a city like Delhi. Having said that, I think what is also important, because this discussion, this workshop is not just to train our people, that is definitely there, but also, to influence the policy paradigm. And that, when I say influence the policy paradigm, you not think that, there's a kind of gap or a mismatch, because something which the water department, we have Jal Shakti Abhiyan or Vibhag, and then we have the urban development. So the urban development goes right, and the Jal Shakti says we go left. There's hardly any convergence, and this actually is further cascading the kind of crisis that we. So we do not just want adaptation here; we want mitigation actually, and that mitigation, I think, has to be quite inherently integrated to the whole process of urban development. And as you rightly pointed out, I'm 100% consonance to that. That this is not rocket science. We've been doing it right from centuries. And just look at the Harappan model, and then, of course, the British further developed. Come to Simla, and you'll find in Institute of Advanced Studies one of the largest water reservoirs that they constructed. So, do you not think? I think we just need to just understand this and really focus more on the interdisciplinary and the integrated approach that is required.
Absolutely, Tikendraji. I think I completely agree with you on this, that we definitely require an integrated approach. Also, policy still continues to be a top-down approach that we take. Many a times, they don't even know the grassroots problem. I was telling about the PhD engineers training that I did in Patna. And they actually even brought out the caste and class paradigm. So that is never taken into consideration. So sometimes, you know, you put a public stand post and who gets access to water on that stand post. So absolutely, again, the other thing is that source sustainability. Now, source sustainability can only happen if you have a good community participation. Unfortunately, after the, like in Patna, what I saw was when 96% of the tap installation program was over, I was invited to do a training program on community participation, which should have been perhaps the first thing to be done because it's prior to that. So just to put those tick marks, you know, in the boxes, check boxes that are there. So when you look at the Jal, our manuals are very good. When I read the Jal Jeevan Mission manual, I thought it had everything in it. It had community participation in it. It had women in it. It had something around water quality testing, training of people, Pani Samiti, everything, literally everything. So what the integrated approach that we are talking about, I think it has everything in it. But unfortunately, what we have is we have government, but we have no governance. So how do you govern these policies? There is nothing to. So policies, how much ever you make. So suppose, you know, people like you and me, if we go and tell, like we have access to the system, we can go and tell them that this is required and it gets documented in policies. But if you don't govern the policies well, how do they translate into action at the grassroots level? But that said, you know, we should definitely try as much as possible to come up with you know, these kind of discussions, share evidence-based policy recommendations with the government. I'm sure things would change slowly, but it is changing. Jal Shakti, I have my own reservations because I still feel not a good baseline was conducted and it has just been launched. And hence, the effectiveness of it cannot be measured. The second thing is we cannot just unscientifically go around digging ponds. Because my watershed is part of a larger catchment, and it is very important that a catchment level assessment and who lives there, how do they interact with the water body, a landscape approach or a waterscape approach, you know, you need to really adopt a more integrated. Completely agree with you on that, Tikinderji. Huh?
I think we can take the questions. Thank you.
All right, sir. Ma'am, there are a set of questions. I'll just read it out for you. Sridhar Ji is asking, how do you measure the amount of water saved through the structures? How do you measure it?
So that's a very good question. So Mr. Sridhar. So the first thing that I said, I did show you a slide where I said, what is the rainwater harvesting potential? So if you are harvesting rainwater from your rooftop, then the formula is very simple. You need to just take the area that is there, multiply it by the total amount of rainfall. And then you have the runoff coefficient that you use. If it's a concrete roof, it's 0.8, but there is a sheet that's there. And the manual, CPWD manual, I'll shortly put the link also in the chat box after the session, so you can access from there. It clearly shows the runoff coefficient that you need to take for different surfaces. Along with that, you need to also probably take the evaporation losses and other losses, so another maybe 0.8 that you multiply by that as well. And then finally, that is the rainwater harvesting potential that is there. Now, it all depends on how you store it also. If you have a foolproof mechanism for storage, you're storing it on a surface after filtration and first flush and other things that is there, you can measure it from the capacity of the tank that you have, that what is the water that you have harvested. If you're putting it in the groundwater also, still you can use the same formula that much amount of water has gone into groundwater. You can cater for a small amount of losses that is there, maybe about 25-30% loss. Even if you're putting it in the groundwater, there is a possibility of water getting lost. So that's how you can actually measure how much water you have been able to harvest from the rooftop.
Sunit Ji is asking, does the policy mandate new houses being built in Gurgaon or other cities to have rainwater harvesting structure?
Yes. So Gurgaon has a policy which actually says that if your rooftop area is 100 square meter or more, then installation of rainwater harvesting structure is mandatory, and it has been there for a while. So as I said, all the DLF flats and all do have a rainwater harvesting structure, but the functionality is something that is in question, because most of them don't function well. See, just installation of a rainwater harvesting structure is not enough. You need to clean your rooftop also. Prior to the monsoons, you then need to clean your rainwater harvesting structure, the pipelines that are there. In case there is any blockage, if you have a filtration system, then you need to clean the filtration system. So you need to really do a proper maintenance of it to ensure that your structure works well. Finally, where do you take that water to? So a lot of water is being taken from these structures. I have seen they just connect it with the sewer line. So it just goes into that, or it just goes into the stormwater drain. It doesn't go into the groundwater, or there is no tank where it goes and gets stored. So that's a complete waste of the entire effort. Again, a lot of issues around rainwater harvesting is behavioral, I would say. But to answer to your question, yes, there is a building bylaw in Gurgaon which talks about compulsorily having rainwater harvesting structure.
Anuprita ji is asking, can rainwater harvesting also prevent waterlogging? And can we convert parking lanes of roads into rainwater harvesting lanes?
Absolutely, you can definitely do that. It can prevent waterlogging. In fact, I missed putting the pictures of the golf course road. What we did was, it was a very simple thing that we did was diverting water from the road. So from Faridabad to Gurgaon, when the water was coming, we just made little channels to divert that water into the catchment ponds that were there. So there were pondage that we created, but there were already existing ponds which were there, which we cleaned and diverted. So almost for the same amount of rain in 2021, we didn't see much flooding in the golf course road. The other thing is our pavements which are there, or the parking lots which are there, they can actually have interlocking blocks with perforations. So that can definitely also help in rainwater harvesting. The road sides which are there, I showed you bioswales. So the sides of the edges of the road, or the sides of the roads where you see a lot of water getting accumulated, you could actually create those little bioswales, and the water can then be diverted there. The sad part is also that in Gurgaon, when I went and I looked at the underpasses, I saw the drains were exactly on the opposite side of the slope that was there on the road. So who is accountable for these things? These are just common sense, that if sloping in a particular direction, then you need to have drains at the same point. But there's another issue that comes is on the accountability part. Over to you.
Prakashi is asking, we had traditional village irrigation ponds for a couple of fields, and we are trying to revive them. If the Gram Panchayats take up rainwater harvesting, then this will help. Any ideas for reviving traditional small ponds?
Prakash, good question. As part of the Jal Shakti Abhiyan, actually a lot of Manrega work is also Manrega labor is also being diverted towards cleaning of ponds. But I am not sure whether private ponds. So if it's a private pond that is there, then perhaps you will have to speak to your sarpanch. But if it is a government pond that is there, if it's a pond on the Panchayat land, then most certainly through the Manrega scheme, the ponds can also be cleaned. Not to really miss out that we really need a lot of voluntary labor from the local community also to develop that sense of belongingness to the pond.
Manishji is asking, does it rain enough for enough supply at home?
Manishji, I'm not sure from which city you are, but I presume that if you are able to, I just showed you a little calculation where I said that if you have a rooftop area of 200 square meter, you can actually have it for a family of 5. You can have, and if there is a 600 millimeter of rainfall, that is there in your city, then perhaps you can have enough water for about 4 to 5 months if you're using it for all purposes. But if you're using it only for drinking, then you can have actually water for the entire year.
Dr. Sangeeta ji is asking, is there any training program for builders on rainwater harvesting? And that will be very helpful for them.
Okay, I just missed this point mentioning. So as part of the Jal Shakti Abhiyan, the government of India has created rain centers. So National Water Mission is anchoring this program, and they have created rain centers across all districts in India. So these districts, they are supposed to do it. I am not sure how equipped they are at this point in time, but they are supposed to actually provide guidance in installation of rainwater harvesting structures. Training programs do keep happening. That's not a problem. As I said, the manual, if you can read the manual, the CPWD manual, the link of which I'll share in the chat box, I think that's good enough. It is very comprehensive manual. It's been there for 2 decades, and that can be used directly for this. Other than that, if you are in Gurgaon, you can go to the Gurujal website, and you can see they have got a whole lot of vendors who are into rainwater harvesting. So you could even access them and take their help in case you're looking at rainwater harvesting installation in your locality. Gurujal also provides consultancy, and they don't charge you. Gurujal is under district administration of Gurgaon, and they don't charge you for providing consultancy in terms of what is the kind of structure that's required for your building.
Ma'am, we still have some more questions, but we are running out of time.
I know.
Ma'am, so maybe you can take one more question and you can end the session.
Yes, please.
So Meji is asking, rainwater harvesting is still not in practice for local rural community. Community radio can play an important role. What can be done other than this?
Yeah, I agree. Community radio, of course, awareness, as I said, creating awareness amongst people is very, very, very important. But other than that, I think you can. Yesterday, in fact, Indraji did speak about Tarun Bharat Sangh, and that's a very good example of involving rural community for rainwater harvesting. So basically, you need to create a sense of ownership, a sense of belongingness, and that comes only when villagers know that, or anybody for that matter, knows that there is some benefit that that person is going to derive out of it. So today you are attending this program, possibly because you think that you can add it to your CV and you can say, or you can go ahead and start doing rainwater harvesting in your area. So there is some kind of benefit that you may derive out of the time that you're giving to this program. Likewise, it's very important to make them understand. So in India now, there are a large number of initiatives of rainwater harvesting, which is there, where villagers have seen that their productivity has gone up. They have diversified into other crops. The overall well-being has changed. So if these are the things that can be done. Very close engagement with Village Water and Sanitation Committee, Water User Association, all these terms that I'm talking about, they're all actually applicable to all rural areas. They are only right now in books. Biodiversity Committee, they're only now in books. How we can really engage with these committees and revive these committees to take up such programs could also help. Leveraging on government schemes. As I said, Jal Jeevan Mission, for instance, has a source sustainability component. How we can leverage on the government schemes also and align our work with the government schemes, that also sometimes helps. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for being with us and answering all the questions from our participants. And we look forward to have you as a guest in our future as well. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Now moving on to our next session, the second session of our second day training program, I would like to invite Ms. Anjali Makhija. Ms. Makhija is CEO at the SM Shegal Foundation, Gurugram. We welcome you, ma'am, to this training program. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
okay. We can hear you, but can't see you.
Yeah, I know there is, I just changed my computer yesterday, so there is some problem. I was trying to reconnect. So sorry about it. I think there's some problem with my camera. Yeah.
Not an issue, ma'am.
Yeah. All right, so I will just share my screen. Okay, so all right. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Yeah, all right. So thank you, IMPRI, and thank you, Ministry of Home Affairs, for giving this opportunity. It was a very interesting session by Dr. Fawzia, and we saw various technologies both in urban and rural areas. And what I am going to share is completely on the software part, and some of it has been touched, which is about the role of community participation. And especially, I would like to mention the role of women in the whole process of harvesting water. So I come from SM Sehgal Foundation, and we work only in rural areas across 11 states, and water and agriculture are two key areas. So just to give you a brief about our mission. So the whole work of Sehgal Foundation is in partnership with communities. And our mission is to strengthen community-led development. So all our work starts with the communities, and in terms of needs assessment, in terms of planning for the project, in terms of completion, sharing the evaluation reports, and changing the mindset. So, I personally, I have worked a lot with women, especially in many Haryana and Rajasthan. And now we have expanded to states like South. We are in Karnataka, Andhra, and Telangana, and again in UP and Bihar. So all the terrains are very different and the needs are very different, but one common theme which cuts across is the need of women participation in any kind of activity, especially in the area of water. So we are in 1,600 villages covering 52 districts in 11 states. So Dr. Fawzia has already spoken a lot about the, urban scenario. So civil society organizations like ours work with the communities, especially to increase the groundwater level. So a lot of work on water augmentation and conservation, which is, not so, the community, I feel, is not sensitized. As we have said, that water is freely available. And even if we harvest whatever water is harvested, they change the crop pattern. Then again, they start, cultivating water intensive crops. So a lot of work has to start with the community and realizing the need of water conservation and water augmentation. And whatever pictures which Dr. Fawzia had portrayed, I think it is very important to share the big picture of India and of world in general about the water being a scarce commodity. And that is what we do. We work a lot on safe drinking water. Of course, harvesting is there, but in areas, where you were talking about floods, and we were talking about what other contamination. So a lot of work on drinking water safety is equally important. And of course, water efficient agricultural practices, which of course is drip and irrigation, micro irrigation is there, but also things like farm bunds and these technologies which are very useful and very much required in the villages. So in all these endeavors, women are missing from community leadership and decision-making forums. So, whenever I have been working in this sector for over 20 years, and I just wanted to share, initially when we used to go and have community meetings, mostly it was the men folk, they used to come for these meetings. A lot of planning used to be done by the men, and the women, even though they were panchayat members, they would send their sons or their husbands for these meetings. And clearly women were missing in all these decision-making forums. And it is very sad because it is the women who are responsible for the water needs at the household level. So, and as managers at the panchayat level, where there are sarpanches or there are panches, so they have an important decision-making role. But the sense of self-worth and the decision-making ability, due to the low self-confidence, was very low. So we talk about structures, we talk about infrastructures, we talk about civil engineers, we talk about geologists, we talk about landscape planners. But in all this arena, the role of women was kind of lost. So that was the starting point from where we started in when we started building these structures, and our key role was to involve women. So, of course, women, as I said, are dealing with all the water issues. And when we do the vulnerability assessment, again, women are the most vulnerable because they are responsible for fetching water. They are responsible for sanitation, for their health of the children. So women are the most vulnerable, yet they are not involved in the decision making. Of course, there are issues of groundwater depletion. It is depleting at a alarming rate. Issues of salinity are there, and again, we are working on addressing these issues, and now salinity is also encroaching the fresh groundwater. And these things, the communities, of course, they understand, but I think the dialogue is very important. It is something at the back of their mind, which is not, discussed at the forefront, and especially women who do not have adequate participation even in agricultural activities. So they are left behind in this whole process of decision making. Another aspect is, of course, wastewater disposal, and especially at the household level and even at the village level. I think someone was asking about ways to harvest the wastewater or excess water. So a lot of potential in soak wells and soak pits, which is very important at the village level. And this process, again, the involvement of women is very important. We talked about community sensitization, and I think without community sensitization, we can just build dams, we can build infrastructure, we can put it in place, it will work for a few years. And unless the community is a party to it, it has the ownership to this whole process, and it will not be able to maintain the whole structures. And after a few years, we will come back to square one. So, I mean, after all, we are creating these facilities for the people, for the communities. So it is so imperative to involve them. They are intelligent people who are, who have the right to be involved in the whole decision-making process of the resource, this very important resource, which we think we are providing to them, but it's their right to be involved in this whole process. So I think community sensitization as equal partners, they have a lot of power within, and I think this whole process needs to be involved in consultation with women. Women participation in drudgery, I can't talk more about it. I mean, you see these long queues of women in the rural areas where young girls, they are missing schools to fetch water. I know the government now has Har Ghar Jal program, and they are also talking about, along with providing tap water, harvesting is the key, because unless the water is available, it cannot be provided. So all these, programs are linked to harvesting of water. And I hope once the taps are there in all the, in all the homes, still the involvement in rainwater harvesting is very much crucial. Of course, there is absenteeism of adolescent girls in schools. We work in many schools, government schools, and due to lack of toilets, especially water in the toilets, the girls, they just go back to their, homes, during breaks or, to use the toilet, and they don't come back. So that is another very important, point to be looked at. And we do a lot of work on harvesting of water in schools. And Dr. Fawzia was mentioning so many times this water is not harvested. So I'm not talking about technologies, but whatever water is harvested, roof water harvested, what roof water in schools is harvested, that is then connected to the ground level. It is used for recharge, as well as made available for toilets. And then we have a biosand filter. Again, those technologies Dr. Fawzia has mentioned about techniques to filter rainwater, rainwater, and that can be made available to these girls in school. So drinking water as well as water for toilets. Another point which has briefly been touched about is the intersection of gender with caste, class, and age. And this is again very important. I think in villages where there is this caste bias, and I remember when I used to go to Rajasthan earlier, I used to go to any house and they would ask me first, what is your caste? Aapki jaat kya hai? And and these kind of questions you cannot. You have to address them effectively. Of course, the whole process of working on the issues of caste and class is a separate paradigm, but it is very much connected to water. Again, women and communities of various castes not allowed to have water. So all these dynamics are very interconnected. So we have to work on the gender stereotypes, and there is a need to work on sensitization on these very important issues, which is not so easy. So this whole process of working on an integrated way, I think, is very, very important. As I shared, of course, we did roof water harvesting in many areas, and again we saw the cropping pattern changed. So, and of course, with the new agricultural technologies, drip is there or micro irrigation is there, even which is not related to water, farm mechanization, which is rampant in India, and India is going through this process of rapid mechanization in the area of agriculture. The role of women has become very limited, both in area of water and agriculture. So wherever I go in the villages these days, when I ask women, they said, "Hum ab kaam nahi karte." In some of the states like Punjab or states like Bihar, where a lot of states like UP also, where a lot of mechanization is there. So they say, "Ab hum nahi jate hain, ab sare kaam machine kar rahe hain." So that was one of the platform where the women used to go out, they used to interact. Agriculture and water are very closely connected. So I think these are again issues where we need to have strategies to work proactively with women and bring them back to the mainstream and decision-making forums in water and agriculture. Another point is lack of meaningful participation in Panchayati Raj. I have worked with a lot of women sarpanches and panchayats, and in Haryana there is 33% representation of women. In states like Rajasthan, there is 50% representation of women. But in all the meetings when we used to go earlier, I'm talking about many years back, again, the participation of women was very, very limited. And I always used to tell them, we can have an all women panchayat, and we cannot have all men panchayat. So the government has given a tremendous kind of power to these women. But unless they exercise their power, their need is will not be not come to the forefront. I know we have Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, for example, now. That those days we used to have Nirmal Bharat Abhiyan, and I went to a village in Haryana, and when I had a first meeting of women, when I talked to them, the first need which they expressed was toilet. So we had worked in the villages for a couple of years. We had talked about water, and we had talked about so many other needs. But when the women came, that was the first need which they expressed. And they used to tell us, nobody has ever, asked us about what we require. And that's how we started this whole movement of involvement of women Panchayat members. And they have tremendous power within. And what is, I think, required is to trickle that power so that their issues, they come to the mainstream of village development plans. And water is so crucial, sanitation is so crucial. Unless their participation is ensured in these decision-making forums, even in Gram Sabha, in many of the villages I used to go earlier, I used to ask women, did you go to a Gram Sabha? And they used to say, Gram Sabha to sirf aadmi jate hain, mahilaएं to jati nahi hai. And that was the understanding which they had, that Gram Sabha, the women voters are not allowed, or they are not mandated to attend the Gram Sabha. So a lot of sensitization on their roles, very important roles in these decision-making forums, I think is very important. Again, then we have limited women technical experts. Even in our organization, we look for civil engineers because we do a lot of work on infrastructure. So we look for civil engineers, geologists, and it is very difficult. It is hard to find these women technical experts in this area. So there is a need to enroll more women technical people in agriculture also. In agriculture, I think it is shifting. Many women are there, but still in the research area, in the ground field level, there are comparatively less women agricultural scientists. So I think it is very important to enroll these women at the academic institutions proactively, so that they can contribute to this very important agenda. And as I said, gender stereotypes is something which has to be dealt with all across. I was in a meeting yesterday, and we were talking about nutrition and safe drinking water. And one of the the resource persons, she said, if women are here, I think I would like to address their women that, they have to have, they have to understand the importance of safe drinking water. So I just told them, I told her, see, as a social scientist, why do we say that if there are women, why not men also? Why don't men also take the responsibility of fetching water? They are the decision-making, they are the decision-making gatekeepers. They are seen as gatekeepers who decide about the water structures. But when it comes to responsibility of actual implementation of water, about where is the responsibility missing? So I think it is very, very important. I don't say these gender stereotypes will break overnight, but it is very important to have that kind of a balance and talk about these issues. At least start now, and of course the change will come over a period of time. And of course the role models. Now we have a lot of role models in the villages. We have worked in the villages with women collectives in the past few years. Now this condition is absolutely very different, especially in areas where civil society organization like ours who work. But few years back, there were very few role models to quote. Now we have a number of case studies where women have gone together as collectives. They have demanded the need for water at their village level, or integrated the rainwater harvesting plan in the village development plan, or as part of school management committees, village health, sanitation and nutrition committees. Again, they are putting forward their plans and decisions. But, many years back, it was not so. And I think it is important to identify these role models and again, share their stories with other women so that they can get inspired and they can, participate effectively. So I think a women-centric approach to sustainable rainwater conservation is extremely important. Dr. Fawzia talked about maintenance, and I really feel that women as water managers are absolutely effective in both maintaining the water structures and mobilizing the whole communities in participation. So I think there is a need to do a lot of work in schools on about harvesting of water. I think that is one of the key potential areas, and we have worked in over 115 schools, and we work. Of course, it depends upon the condition of the building. But that is a potential area. And again, in here, the school management committee is very important. So in the school management committee in schools, 50% again are parents, are women members, and 75% of school management committee members are parents of the children. So women again have a key role to play in these schools in providing water in the schools. Again, roof water harvesting and rainwater harvesting, infrastructure and sensitization. We have a contribution in kind, and it was so ironical when we had initial meetings with the villages. There was a lot of participation by men, but when there was this the whole process of mobilization of contribution in kind in terms of providing material, during that time there was a lot of participation of women. So when it used to come to actual labor, the women would participate. When there used to be actual decision making forums, the men would participate. So this cute kind of experience which we had in the initial years, and it took us a lot of time to have a turnaround, and it needs consistent effort. But I think many times we just rule out this importance, and I think it is very important if we need to for impact and for sustainability of this program. So in the village development committees, VHSNCs, as I said, village health, sanitation and nutrition committees, again, this is a mandatory body under Ministry of Health at the rural areas. And Dr. Fawzia was mentioning that in many of these committees, they are on paper. So what is required is to revive those committees, and when they are revived, to ensure the participation of women, which is mandatory in all these communities. Village development committees, of course, used to be formed a few years back, but now we have in all our programs, wherever there is an infrastructure program, again, we also form the VDC at the village level so that the community can contribute and they can deposit an amount contribution in cash in these VDCs, which can be used for the maintenance of the structures in the coming years. The women collectives, I think, have tremendous power. So women might feel isolated and they might have low sense of worth when they are alone. But in my experience, when they come together as a collective, they get a tremendous sense of confidence and power from each other. So in our villages, they have come together and they have taken up projects on sanitation, water harvesting, desilting of ponds, reviving traditional bodies, soak pits, soak wells, a whole lot of different structures, and they are continuing to maintain these structures. The role of policy was talked about. I know Tikenderji had talked about it, but I would also like to mention about policy actors at a village level or at a district level. I mean, of course, we talk about policy level at the national level or its implementation at the state level. But the policy actors, women has policy actors at the village level, at the district level, even at different levels of PRIs, not only Gram Panchayat, but in all the 3 tiers of Panchayati Raj. So I think they have a very important role to play, and the government has a very good program, a very good structure in place. But civil society organizations and people like us who can volunteer, people who are especially in this course, who can volunteer and, make it a mass movement, I think that is the need. And women as paratechnical volunteers. Many of you have, must have heard about technical volunteers where women are getting together and they are, repairing hand pumps in villages, or the technical aspects of roof water harvesting. We did an assessment in a few villages a few years back, a new area where we hadn't worked before. So during the assessment, I was asking the women, आप क्यों नहीं आते हैं, आप क्यों नहीं participate करते हैं? So one of the women, I remember, she told me, जो महिलाओं का दिमाग है वो छोटा होता है और उनका दिमाग घुटनों में होता है. I mean, I was surprised when I heard that, and they actually believed it. They had been conditioned over the years that they do not have the intelligence or the skills or the knowledge to take actively participate in decision making, and they are devoid of that kind of intelligence. So it is so important, to break this chain of resignation which is there among women. And we need support of both, and I'm not saying that men and women, I think both of them have to be brought in at a common platform. Of course, if you go to some villages, there are separate meetings of women and separate meetings of men, and with women also, they feel maybe probably safe in the initial years when they discuss these issues, but gradually once they get enough confidence, they come to the main gram sabhas or the main discussion forums. Initially we did a lot of work in organizing Mahila Gram Sabhas on issues of water. And once these issues were discussed at the Mahila Gram Sabhas, then gradually they had the confidence and they participated in the main Gram Sabha. So, those kind of safe forums, I think, are very important to build the confidence of women, and then mainstream them in the main decision-making forums. So I think there is a need to scale this whole topic of women and water and make it into a movement where women are the key stakeholders in all the decision making. Wherever you go in the villages, whatever pictures I'm sharing with you, you see these women, near water, near the water bodies, collecting water or washing clothes or bathing the cattle everywhere. It's women and water. And in all the meetings, I think it's time now that we have these stakeholder consultations with women. And it's not a side activity. It has to start with women, and it has to, of course, the men need to be involved, and they are equal participation. But the participation in terms of gender equity, I think, we need to address. And then also recognizing that the power lies within. I think there is a lot of power which lies within, but we need to have that dialogue. As I said, I'm not so, I don't use the word empower so much, because empower is something which from the top and you empower a person, but in terms of, changing the language these days, we talk about the power which is already there, and what is needed is to tap that power among women, and emerging and emulating role models. We have a lot of role models now in the village. And we published their case studies. I'm very happy Ministry of Jal Shakti had last year brought out a document, and they had organized an event on women water champions. So a lot of women from the grassroots and our team women also participated, and they got recognized for the work in the water. So that was again at a policy forum, how at the policy level, the ministry and people at the policy level recognize the grassroots level women who are contributing so much in the area of water. So that connection, as I said, between the local policy actors and the national level, that connection is also important, and something which can give tremendous confidence and inspiration to women. And women in leadership roles at all levels of stakeholders. I again feel not only at technical level, at every level in our development sector, and all the areas are connected. They are interconnected. So women at the board level, women at the senior level, at the middle level, at the grassroots level, at the panchayat level, at the academic level, at the policy level. I used to go to the government department, initially, and most of in the government departments I'm not mentioning the state, but in some of the districts where I used to go, they used to be all men. And whenever I used to go, there was this tremendous sense of discomfort. Are mahila kahan se aa gayi humse baat karne? They were so used to talking, and whenever we used to talk about Mahila Panches, they were so comfortable in talking with only their husbands. They are panchayats. If some of you have seen that serial Panchayat, which is being aired on Amazon these days, very, very interesting, I think, and how a woman Panchayat Sarpanch is gradually evolving and participating in all the decision making. So it's wonderful to have these case studies, and gradually when you talk to them, their I think initial bottlenecks which are there, they also get shedded down. Then they also get used to it. I feel it's not that they do not want to discuss with women, it's just that they have not been used to it. So when repeatedly we go to them, and their apprehension, if they are hesitant initially, all those barriers gradually get dissipated, and then that provides a forum for connection. So we need to break those barriers, we need to break that glass ceiling, and enroll men and other gatekeepers in the villages. And everyone is a gatekeeper of their own village. Everyone has immense potential and confidence and the power to contribute to the development of the village, and especially in the water crisis. And in our country, of course, water is so important. Our agriculture is linked to water. We are sufficient in food production. Yeah, so villages are agrarian. So we cannot talk about water in isolation with agriculture. And I see so many these young people in the villages, they are going away from agriculture, they are migrating because agriculture, they don't have the interest in agriculture, or there is water scarcity, and agriculture may not be so remunerative. So, but now we are talking about doubling farmers' income in agriculture. A lot of reforms in agriculture which I have seen in the past few years, and linked to agriculture is water. So if we have to be a food basket, self-sufficient in food, we have to talk about water. It cannot be in isolation. So I think, and the role of women, both as agriculture, as farmers, women as farmers, women as water champions, they all are interlinked. And I think the time has come to enroll women in various platforms. I'm so happy that IMPRI has provided this platform, and we are talking about governance issues. So, and we have women speakers also. So it's a very interesting, dialogue. And I have only this much to share. Whatever I have shared is based on my experience as practitioners. I work at the village level. Now I head the organization, but my initial many years have been in working directly with women at the grassroots levels on issues of water, agriculture, and education in schools. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to take any suggestions, any comments, any questions. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Makkija, for this extremely enlightening presentation and helping us to understand the role of women in rainwater harvesting. Now, Tikendra sir, if you have any comments.
No, I think this is absolutely from a practitioner's perspective, and how often we miss very simple and very important elements when we are defining our policies basically. And I think these also pertain to the success of successful implementation of our understanding, and also that I don't like this word stakeholder, but I think they are one of the most important part and parcel of rainwater conservation. We've seen this. Not just in villages, where women play a predominant role in collecting water, kind number of man days that are lost, but even in the urban centers, you see it's the women who flock around when their tankers are there. So I think it's really important the way Anjali ji has brought out this very important aspect of forgetting important issue. But having said that, Anjali ji, this is what actually which really concerns me, is that when we talk about participation of the women, we forget the role of the state, and often it is considered, and of course we'll come up with very successful stories where women have played a pivotal role. But do you not think that all this has to be a part and parcel of the overall policy paradigm? It should not just be when we just think about these issues in isolation, but it should be part and parcel. And do you not think when we focus about a particular aspect, then we lose the role that the state must play? And actually, it is an important role as far as water is concerned, because that's how our constitutional framework got involved. And this is what I've always been asking: is water a right or water a need? So if it is a right, do you not think that there's certain elements of the right that accrue from the Constitution, and bringing out stories actually negates and also creates a kind of alibi for the state to not to perform? How do you take that?
Yeah, so yeah, that's very interesting. But in my experience, yes, state has a very, very important role in terms of motivation. And what I mentioned is how Ministry of Jal Shakti had identified women water champions, and I know they realize the need for it. But of course, state is also they are made of individuals, they are made of people, so sensitization, even as I said, at the district level, when I used to go, I used to meet with all kind of people in the government department, and they themselves need to be involved in this discussion. So, it is there. For example, women participation is there. The state has mandated 33% participation, and it has been left. Of course, what is beyond? So I think state also needs to, I guess, involve people at all levels, maybe at civil society organizations if they do not have adequate person power, or if their team themselves need to be engaged in such dialogue. So that kind of, dialogue at that kind of forums is very, very important at all levels. So yeah, I completely agree with you. There has to be a, it has to be from above, and then there is also a responsibility of civil society organization like ours to, portray that voices to the state, and that's how I think from both ends they have to take steps forward. That is, what has been my experience.
Okay, I think, sorry, we can take if there are a few questions. I can see.
All right, sir. I'll move on to the questions now. Soumyaji is asking, how can self-help group members play an important role?
Yes, sure. So self-help group is also a women collective, a form of a collective of women. And we have now stories where self-help groups are not only engaged in collecting, funds and doing, setting up their enterprises, but on a larger role on, water harvesting. And now NRLM is also expanding its scope and not limited to lending and borrowing. So that is a platform which already exists. And definitely they have a lot of leadership skills. They have been trained over the years. So that's a very good platform to who can take this initiative forward.
Prakashji is asking, the general experience is that though we have women as representatives in local bodies, they are still dominated by males. They find barriers with bureaucracies, but the scene is changing now. Is there any specific training program to develop the skills and competencies of women in local government bodies where RWH could be an integrated part?
So women, the state has this whole curriculum. Whenever there is a new Panchayat election, for example, and the new Panchayat comes into play, the state has this training program of all the Panchayat members in a particular state. I mean, I've seen it in many states where we have worked. So the curriculum of roles and responsibilities, the village development plan, all those things are talked about. So, but sometimes it is not very effective, because even if the training programs are organized, they are many times attended by their husbands or their sons. So women, they do come, but they are not, meaningfully, they are not participating. So I think that is again a very important role of the state when they are organizing even school management committees, for example. In SMCs, they have limited funds on roof water harvesting. In some states, they are now, having CSR funds. The state is tying up with CSR funds to implement these RWH in schools. But in terms of training of SMCs, again, then the women participation is limited. So that is why it's so important to work with these, policy actors and ensure that women are brought to these decision-making forums, and then they can participate and devise strategies and plans.
Dr. Swati is asking, she would like to listen your experience from Barmer district.
Barmer?
Barmer, yes, ma'am.
Yes, so yeah, we have worked in Barmer for a few years, and there we did a lot of work on check dams and pond and women in Rajasthan as such. I have this experience that they are very forthcoming. So and what I was mentioning about the caste and class distinction is much I have experienced in Rajasthan. So, but Barmer is an area where, again, extremely good participation of women in all our, processes. And it is very similar to other areas of, Rajasthan. But accessibility of women there initially was low, so it required a tremendous amount of hard work to seek their participation initial years. But over the years, now we are not working in Barmer, but a few years back when we had, I visited that area also. So, very forthcoming and good participation of women over the years. Yeah.
Sunit Malhotra ji is asking, I wish to create women waterpreneurs in as many cluster of villages as possible that would solve water issues and increase the income of 4 women. I have the low cost tech part covered, but do not know how to identify needs or women who could do this. Do you think this is possible? What challenges do you foresee among communities if I wish to do this with an NGO like yours? Will there be acceptable, or do you see this if there is any possibility?
Yes, sure. We also organize trainings for other organizations, especially on community participation. We have water experts. If you see, there is Household Water Treatment Network, which has been started, HWTS, which has been started by our organization. You can visit us, you can write to me. And I don't know which state are you talking about, because again, designing water interventions is very state specific. Because the water level, the landscape and all is very different. And the participation of women is again differs from state to state. Some of them are not so forthcoming. It takes more time in some areas. It depends upon their exposure. So yeah, you please write to us. I will I will just mention my email on the chat box. So you please reach out to us and we can see how, we can have a dialogue and take this forward.
Thank you, ma'am, for taking up all the questions. Now you can conclude the session and if there's any way forward.
Yeah, so no, I'm just, I already mentioned that I think it's important to take it up as a movement. And I'll be very happy if the participants have more suggestions or they would like to visit us and learn from our experience. But just one thing, women not as just mere participants, just coming in the meeting and sitting at one place. No, I think, of course, that is required in the beginning, but we have to take it beyond that. And it will require a little more effort, but we have to engage. I think there is a need to engage them more meaningfully in the water and agriculture area. And we have innovative strategies, innovations, not only in structures, technical structures, but we need innovations in terms of socialization and in terms of, community processes, which are more effective. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for being with us and engaging with our participants and answering all the questions. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
That was the end of the second session. Now, moving on to the third session, I would like to invite Dr. Brajesh Kumar Dubey. Dr. Dubey is Associate Professor, Environmental Engineering and Management, and in charge, Sustainable Engineering and Circular Economy Research Laboratory, Department of Civil Engineering, Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, or IIT KGP. We welcome you, sir. Please go ahead and start the session. The floor is
Thank
yours
you.
now.
Thank you. So I'll just share my screen. Should be able to see my screen now.
Yes, sir. We can see the screen.
So you can, yes. Okay, perfect.
Okay, so let's get started. So I have been asked to talk about in terms of challenges of wastewater treatment, which is slightly different than what you have been hearing possibly since morning. So we will talk about how wastewater kind of plays a role in terms of when we talk about in terms of water resources and how having a good wastewater treatment will help us in terms of having better kind of control over our water situation. So let's get started. And if you have any questions, put it on the chat box or Q&A. You have a Q&A for that, and we can take it later on. So before we jump there, and since we are talking about disasters and all those kind of issues associated with that, several environmental issues, social issues, off and on, I thought that let's try to put things in a little bit in context. See, if you look at why we have been talking about all these environmental issues, we want to make this earth a better place, isn't it? We want to have this earth, whatever way we got it, and when we leave this planet, everybody has to leave this planet at some point of time. So it should be in a better shape so that our future generation can enjoy at least the way we enjoy it. So that's the big picture kind of the thought process. So if you look at the humans on this particular planet, Earth is around 4.6 billion years old. Some of the newer research says it is even older than that. But let's just stick with 4.6 billion years old. And then if you put this 4.6 billion years in a 24-hour scale. Why 24 hours? Because there is a 24 hours in a day. So if you just think about 24 hours, it becomes easy for us. We can visualize 24 hours. So take the entire age of the Earth, put it on a 24-hour scale. So in that scale, 1 second is 52,000 years. 1 second gone while we are talking is 52,000 years is gone. So that kind of timeline we are talking about. So if you look at the timeline, actually humans have existed on this planet for just 4 seconds. The modern humans that we are talking about, around 210,000 years, more than 200,000 years. And in this 200,000 years, we have created so much mess on this planet. We have created so much of water pollution, air pollution, soil pollution, and so on and so forth. The climate change, all those issues that we have created. See, Mother Earth does not need us. We saw that during the pandemic. At the beginning of the pandemic, when we had this lockdown, actually flora and fauna flourished. We saw the wildlife flourishing. They were decreasing even water contamination in our river, because the factories were closed. So we saw improvement in environmental performance indicators while during the first few months of lockdown. As soon as they started unlocking again, things went back. So if you look at the Earth doesn't need us. There were a lot of species before us. As you can see here, the Earth, if you look at the age of the Earth, there were a lot of species before us, and there will be a lot of species after us. So that kind of puts the entire ego that we have as a human, that we are the superpower. That's a tiny virus showed us that who is the powerful. Like this tiny COVID virus, if you take the entire virus of the world and put it in a Coca-Cola can, even the can will not get filled. Maybe it's around 80% of the can will be full. That's much virus if you take the mass of the virus. But that actually showed us where we stand. So just wanted to put you in a perspective that so we have to really be humble when we are dealing with environmental issues. Unfortunately, we are not. So that's we have to really take care of this mother planet. Otherwise, there is no future. So with that background, you have heard a lot. Let's talk about water. Water in terms of wastewater. That's what I was reviewing and see for a few days back. He wanted to talk about wastewater. So that's why I thought. So how we are doing? We are not really doing well. If you look at the Indian context, only 70% of only 30% of our sewage. I'm talking about sewage. Industrial wastewater slightly maybe better, But the domestic wastewater that you and I produce on a daily basis at our homes, only 30% is getting treated. 70% is ending up untreated into the surface water, which lots of organic loading. You have high BOD there, and that consumes lots of dissolved oxygen. That creates a lot of issues like Jamuna River. Many of you might be sitting in Delhi or NCR area. Or you can look at any cities, any big cities in India. We see those homes on Bangalore lakes. You see a lot of, you go to, when you are traveling through the train, as you pass any river, you look at the condition of the river. We have basically created a mess of all these rivers. And so that's why it is happening, because we are not treating our domestic wastewater as well as the industrial wastewater effectively. Rules are there, a lot of programs are being built, but it's still, there is a lot of issues associated with that. There has been some improvement over the last few decades. We'll talk about that as well. Now, of course, I always look at things in a positive way. So things are getting better, but at a much slower rate than what actually needs to happen. So, but if you look at it's what is doing, we are lots of we are getting all this oil getting into the surface water. We are getting non-flushable paper. That's some of the clogging issues that happens in the system. Wastewater, because of wherever the wastewater system is, that also is creating a lot of issues because we are not managing it properly. A lot of clogging issues, backup issues, and we are. If you look at in terms of it's a waste of resource. Wastewater is actually, although the term wastewater, we can get rid of the term waste and make it more as a resource water. It's actually a resource. If you look at the example of Singapore, if you visit Singapore, on day 1, whatever you flush, day 5th or 6th, actually you are drinking the same water. It sounds so weird, isn't it? But you are flushing down the toilet, you are drinking it after 5 or 6 days, because in fact we are doing it anyway. So if you look at the river Ganges, whatever is getting flushed in, if you start from say Kanpur, whatever is getting into Kanpur, same thing is what the people in Allahabad is drinking, and what the Allahabad then back and Varanasi, then it comes to Patna. So we are actually drinking sewage water anyway, and but we are not drinking it directly. Of course, we are getting it treated. We have the water treatment plant where we get this sewage water treated, and not sewage water, we are getting the river water treated, but the river is getting a lot of untreated sewage being dumped, and even sometimes a lot of industrial wastewater being dumped in Kanpur and those industrial areas. So we have to really, we can tap those resources. The organics present in the wastewater can be converted to energy source. We can make biogas out of that. We can produce the digested from the biogas, could be used as a fertilizer. Of course, we have to look at the whole system of contaminants in there, because we're using a lot of, these days we are using a lot of pharmaceuticals, we are using a lot of hormonal products. So those things we need to test it out before we use it in certain application. But if we treat the waste, if we take the wastewater and treat it properly, a lot of demand on the surface water will actually, with a lot of demand for the fresh water will go nice. Because we can take, even if you don't drink it, say if you don't want to drink it because of the psychological issues, although it is as clean as drinkable water, we can make it as clean as drinkable water. If you visit our IIT Kharagpur campus, I can show you a plant. We have a 0.3 MLD plant where we are taking the sewage water of the part of the campus and we are treating it all the way to potable water. Only we are not drinking it right now because we haven't tested some of those pharmaceuticals and personal care products. We are just trying to build that capacity to test it. But it can be used for flushing, it could be used for irrigation purposes, it could be used for washing the cars, it could be used for even all the household work except for cooking and drinking. So that kind of system we have to put in place, because that will reduce the demand for fresh water. Because getting the fresh water, pumping it through from the rivers or wherever, of course, you can, even if you when you set up this rainwater harvesting, all these requires a lot of money. And at the same time, this wastewater, which is a resource, we are just letting it go. So that could be again another source of resource which we need to tap into. So that's what I was trying to highlight. So that's where this concept comes in terms of, you may have heard the term these days called circular economy. Of course, every few years we get a new buzzword. These days, earlier it was sustainability or something else, or pollution prevention. All of these actually means the same thing. So basically, how to have the systems thinking. In fact, that's what at the end of the previous talk, our Panwar Sahab was kind of alluding to that. We need to have a systematic approach, like having a systems thinking rather than having a silos approach. We have to have a systems approach in any problem we try to address. So here also, if you have a system thinking, so when we're talking about water, wastewater, of course, the water, the wastewater, surface water, all the rainwater harvesting, all of these has to be integrated together. We cannot just think about one system and not about the other. We have to bring everything together and try to have a complementary nature of these systems. So that's what is very, very important. And there are examples out there. There are some good examples from the previous, like if you look at some of those examples that we had several hundred years ago, even it's still being practiced in Rajasthan and other places. And if you look at from a modern system as well, if you, there are systems, I already talked about Singapore, where they are trying to do something similar. You look at many European countries are trying to do something in California or in North America, parts of North America, where in Canada, they are trying to do something where they have tried to integrate the wastewater treatment, water treatment, surface water, everything together, and then they are trying to get maximum resource out of it. Use this energy from the wastewater, and that energy can be fed into water treatment. So those things so we have to have a holistic approach while solving these kind of problems. And if you extend it further in a more generalistic way, its goal is to keep these products and material in use. Right? Let's use it as much as possible. And then if you extend to industrial waste or solid waste, the same concept is there too, like having more of circularity, because we cannot actually afford to waste. We are close to 8 billion people. We'll be 8 billion in a few years from now, 7.5 or so. I think we have 7.7 billion today, around that number. So we can, every time we cannot go to Mother Earth and ask for resource to make our energy, to make our raw material. We need to take this waste, whether it's a solid waste, whether it's a liquid waste, and try to use it as a resource as much as possible. That's the whole concept of circular economy. And try to regenerate the natural system. Here, this diagram is talking about that you have your wastewater treatment plant. You get from all these households and your industries and others. You collect this wastewater, bring it to the wastewater treatment plant. The clean water goes for irrigation purposes. The sludge goes to the energy factory where they make energy out of that, and that energy could be used as a biogas, could be used as an electricity. Then you have the byproduct of this energy factory can be used to make bioplastics. We are talking about banning single-use plastics, so we have to go for biodegradable plastic. So those things are good and also could be used for fertilizer. So here, as you can see, it's kind of going towards what is known as approaching to zero waste. We cannot afford to waste, whether it's a solid waste, liquid waste, whatever. It's that time is gone that we can keep on wasting stuff. We have to go for more of circular economy kind of thinking. Why? Because we already know we have, if we talk about the water sector, for 54% of India's groundwater wells are decreasing. We have the groundwater stress, we also have surface water stress. If we don't, there are some areas, if you look at parts of here, Rajasthan, Gujarat, even all the southern states and parts of other states as well, you see all those red numbers. It's a water stressed area, and many of these, even we cannot will not be able to afford to have industries there. See, any industry you set up, you need water. Without water, you cannot even make we are using sometimes our friends from computer science, electronics, they think like this is just an environmental problem or agricultural sector problem. No, you cannot even make your chip, you cannot make your laptop without water too. So you need even energy that we produce, that requires water. So water is and to make even for GDP numbers. We talk about GDP numbers. We all worry about that whether our country is growing at a faster rate or a slower rate. Without water, you cannot grow. If you don't have water, no industry, no growth. So that's where the focus has to be. So it's really nice to have these kind of dialogue where we can talk about different issues associated with the water, wastewater, and all that. So So what can be done to prevent in terms of water pollution? So it's of course turn off the tap. This is some of the very basic stuff. Avoid leakages, no dumping of the waste. Avoid overdosage of pesticides and fertilizers. Don't throw non-degradable materials in river lakes. Pre-treatment of industrial wastewater before leaving to water bodies. So all those, there's a lot of awareness program needs to happen in terms of what needs to be done. So the simple things should not be used. We should not use river for washing clothes or bathing animals. Harvesting of rainwater, which is kind of the focus of this particular program. Dams and embankments, rivers. And here dams and embankments, again, there is a lot of question mark there. Like what is the negative effect of dams? We have to address those things too. Dead bodies, plastics. We are throwing so much stuff. I'll talk towards the end of the talk. I will give you. We have done some work with National Geographic Society on plastic pollution on River Ganges. So I'll just show you some of the information from there, and try to reduce non-point runoff, prevent groundwater contamination. So these are some of the things we can do. So I think if you very simply, if you say no to pollution, try to minimize pollution, recycle water, as I was trying to tell you earlier. Many of you may be aware of the concept of gray water and black water. So whatever we flush through the toilet is black water. Whatever we use in our kitchen, bathrooms for washing and other purposes, that could be gray water. Gray water actually can be easily recycled. If you go to Paryavaran Bhavan in Delhi, where our Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is, they do have the system in place so the gray water is recycled. Many new of the apartment complexes are also going to that route. So they're trying to use recycle of the gray water back for flushing system. I was visiting Australia one time in Adelaide Airport. The entire flushing and all those things, other than drinking water, they are actually recycling the water from there itself. So a lot of programs are happening around the world where they have to recycle water. Minimize use of water, of course, that's another things you can do. Then major problem that we are getting today is we are getting a lot of pollution. There are some pollutions, we call it pollutants of poverty. Sanitation related bacterial trash and litter in waterways. 80% of the world's wastewater is actually released to the environment without treatment. In India, it is 70%. In the world, it is 80%. Like if you take the African countries and all that other poor countries in the world, 80% of the world, there is no water treatment. And we get a lot of sanitation related bacteria and other stuff. Of course, we made a lot of toilets as part of the Swachh Bharat mission. There is some issue in terms of whether the usage of the toilet, how much the toilet is being used, but at least it has made some improvement for sure. It must have made some improvement. We need to kind of look at that. But so in terms of in India, we will probably see lesser some impact. In fact, some of the research that has come out, which has shown that we are seeing less sanitation related stuff in waterways in India. But that's the pollutants of poverty. Then there are the pollutants of growing prosperity, chemical and waste from industry, agricultural fertilizers, pesticides. Those are getting into the waterways. Use of nitrogen as a fertilizer has increased more than 700% since 1960s. So over last 60 years, 700% increase in the use of fertilizer. Then we are seeing emerging contaminants, this microplastics, nanoplastics, pharmaceuticals, nanoparticles. These are all getting into the water, and these are again a big problem in terms of water pollution. So we talked about recycle the water earlier, where you try to recycle. Untreated wastewater is dangerous. There's a lot of contaminants in there. So we have to improve the water quality and availability. We have to recycle the water. We have to treat the water. We cannot really let the water go like that, surface water. So there are some examples we can speak. There is a lot of work is done in terms of California is working a lot, because California, if you know somebody in California, or if you follow the news, it's one state in US there's a huge water scarcity. There has been rationing of water, you can say, in California, right? And California is hub of so much of industry, isn't it? Industry, our almonds, badam jo aap khate ho, good quality badam other than from the North India, we get a lot of imported almonds from California. So if the water is not there, the almond prices will go up, and a lot of other things will get affected too. So these are, they are actually working a lot in terms of recycling of water. They are trying to conserve. There is a lot of, we can reduce usage of water. There is a lot of wastage happens in terms of this household filter system. Those Kent, RO, and all those AquaGuard, whenever you use it, you lose a lot of water there too. So those are there. So we have to conserve the water. We have to try to use a like this designed water bottle at glass to refill all day. So that's allowing you to cut down to the number of glasses to wash. So you can have one water bottle. So you can have a water bottle like that and use it for throughout the day, rather than you don't have to clean, because every time you put in your dishwasher and you go for cleaning, you are using one, and you are also adding a lot of soaps and other things there too. So reduce the water, take a bucket bath, fix leaking tap, turn it off, recycle water, upgrade your equipment, use energy efficient technologies, and so on and so forth. We all talk about that from the household, from a kindergarten level, from elementary school. We have been listening to it, but we don't do it. But the days are not far where we will actually force to do that, because we are running out of good quality water. So there are ways to kind of saving of how you can save water at home. I can share these slides with the organizer. They can pass it on if you're interested. So in terms of water pollution, what is needed for any particular area is a comprehensive water management plan. Construction of proper stormwater drain, rainwater harvesting structure, which we'll be talking about here in great detail, having affluent and sewage treatment plant, regular monitoring of water wastewater, reuse the treated wastewater for irrigation, discharge the affluents as per the standards. And then there are a lot of simple things you can do to stop water pollution, which I just mentioned. I showed you those diagram as well. In India, we have wastewater discharge standards, and then recently, that is also almost 4, 5, 6 years ago, that was even revised by NGP. They said that old norms for BOD was less than 30, and then say the draft norm is less than 10. And they have also come up with that less than 30, less than 20 for metro cities. For some cities, they have put less than 10. But as I told you earlier, 70% of our India's sewage is not treated. So even if you go to less than 10, I don't know, like I would rather focus on let's make it less than 30 in close to 100%, then go for less than 10, because we are already not we are disposing 70% of our sewage as it is without any treatment, and so even if you reduce the standard, how does it really matter unless the infrastructure improves? And there has been work on improving the infrastructure, but many places what is happening, we have the wastewater treatment plant, but there is no sewerage network. Sewerage network is there, old drains are there, those drains are all choked with plastics. We are banning single-use plastic right now, but we are banning only part of the those kind of plastics, because the packaging material will still be there. And the problem is that we cannot really replace those packaging material too. It's very difficult to, we don't have the alternatives. So there is quite a complex exercise, but of course, for your information, there is a newest entity kind of draft guideline, which has even made it more stringent in terms of the discharge of wastewater. But unfortunately, since we don't have like a capacity in terms of infrastructural capacity, most of the places we are not actually able to meet this standard. So these standards are there. Then, as you know, that it's orders stricter norms for effluent discharge from sewage treatment plants in cities. But unfortunately, as I said, many places we don't even have sewage treatment plant, working sewage treatment plant right now. Then you heard about this whole it's Namami Gange stuff, where people were like it's a huge project. A lot of work is being done along the river Ganges. A lot of wastewater treatment plant is also being constructed. We can debate on the technology of the wastewater treatment plant. Many places SBR is being used, sequential batch reactor. We can say whether it's a good technology to use in Indian conditions, or whether in terms of long-term durability, sustainability of that technology, we can always debate on that. But of course, yes, the plants are being constructed. But as I said earlier, many places plants are there, but sewage network is not there. So because if you have a plant at a certain location, the sewage has to reach to that location. So to make that sewage reach to that location, we don't have the system in place, or if we are building those systems in place. Wherever the old systems are there, it is being choked with, because it's a kind of open drain, some places, it is choked with garbage because we don't have proper waste management system. So it's a, that's why you need a holistic approach. You need a holistic, systematic approach where you need to sit down and kind of look at that particular, the entire water-related infrastructure. When I say water, wastewater, solid waste, all are linked together. So all this infrastructure has to be looked together. Then you can come up with a system level approach to solve this problem. So Namami Gange making kind of a lot of at least infrastructures are being built and a lot of things are being improved. Hopefully it will lead to some positive outcome. Right now, in terms of impact on the river Ganges, maybe slightly it is there, but not as much as you would expect it to be there. Then I told to you that we also looked at, this was a project funded from National Geographic Society, where we look at how much plastic is making way to river Ganges in terms of, because of mismanagement of plastic on the land. So as I said earlier, if you don't manage plastic on the land, you will have a water pollution problem too. So that's why a systematic approach is very, very important. So we looked at from all the way from Harsal to the Bay of Bengal, and we collected samples all along the way at 10, 12 different locations. So it's 3 to 5, 7, and 4, 11 locations. And we looked at how much like a microplastics. We also looked at the place around 5 kilometers on both sides of this river to see how much of the land plastics which is mismanaged in this area. I had a big team. You can we had a team from Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun, and IIT Kharagpur, where I am right now. So we were from India side, and then we had University of Georgia. We had people from UK and people from Bangladesh, because we also work on the Bangladesh side. So that was, and then the goal was to find out, and the report is already there in National Geographic website. If you're interested, you can find it. Then there has been a lot of work also. See, ultimately, when we talk about this sewage, untreated sewage, we talked about industrial wastewater, we talked about this leakages of plastic into surface water. They all end up in the ocean. So there was an initiative by 14 world leaders. They wanted to look at a sustainable ocean economy, and they had several groups working on it. So one of the group, which these are the 14 countries which was involved under the leadership of Peter Thompson, who was a UN as is a special envoy for the ocean. And one of the group focused on leveraging of multi-target strategies to address plastic pollution in the context of already stressed ocean. So this is called a blue paper. World Resource Institute, the WRI, was UK. They were kind of coordinating that. So I happened to be part of this particular group, and we worked on. There are a lot of people here, but one of the lead authors included Jenna from US, Ellie from US, and myself from here. Then we have a lot of other authors there too. So what we found is around 5 to 13 million metric ton of plastic is going to ocean each year. One dump truck of plastic per minute. So if you think about one garbage truck, that much of plastic getting into the ocean every year, because we're not managing our solid waste as well as the liquid waste, because the sewage and the stormwater, they also carry a lot of plastics to the rivers and then finally to the ocean. 13 billion damage in the marine environment. 3% of the ocean plastic is only floating. So once it is there in the ocean, it's very difficult to clean up, because 97% actually goes deeper into the ocean. So you cannot really clean up. This close to 2 million microplastic per square meter. Those of us who enjoys seafood, it's not a good news. It's not a good news for any one of us, but of course, like if you enjoy seafood, your pomfret and other fish and other seafood, it's a problematic. You are possibly eating a little bit of plastic every time you're eating seafood. So, and by 2050, they say we'll have more plastic pieces in the ocean than the fish. So that's and then it's a plastic, and a lot of other contaminants also comes to this ocean. And as you can see the sources, oil platform spills, industrial recreational fishing, shipping containers, aquaculture, cruises, disaster debris, recreational boating, solid waste dumping, crop and animal agriculture, all these actually contributes to ocean pollution. So municipal sectors, agricultural sector, industrial sectors, maritime sector, all sectors are involved here. And these are the pollutants, microplastic, other solid waste, pesticides, antibiotics, heavy metals. As you can see, this is quite exhaustive. This is not a complete list. You can find a lot of things there. And these are all impacting negatively to ocean health as well as to the economy. Ocean economy is getting impaired productivity of fish, loss of seafood supply, loss of valuable resource wasted, reduced tourism, recreation in the coastal areas. So those are happening. So again, we took a holistic approach here. We looked at what could be done at an urban center level, how to improve our wastewater treatment, improve the stormwater management, adopt green chemistry practice, recover, recycle, improve coastal zone, build local systems for safe food and water. So these are some of the solutions we kind of suggested, and we looked at which are the different sectors which will be involved. What are the different sectors as well as what are the sustainable development goals will be involved for these stuff, like what sector needs to get involved and what sustainable development goal we are targeting here. The study was covered in many news outlets, including in the Guardian. It was there. And so, as I said earlier, we're targeting different sustainable development goals in terms of trying to solve this ocean pollution problem. So that kind of covers most of it, what I wanted to talk about wastewater and issues associated with that. Now, just I want to very briefly tell you about some of the work that we do in our lab, just a couple of slides, this one slide and a few more slides. These are some of the work we are doing. This is just for the, I don't know, I think that there will be a lot of students in the audience if they are looking for a master's, PhD or whatever. These are, if you are interested to work with us, if you are interested to collaborate with us. I'm essentially a waste management person. I do work on liquid waste, but most of the work is on solid waste side. So we are, right now the focus is on kitchen, food waste, plastics, and also we are looking at the hydrogen production from waste. So, but one of the areas which we are working on is trying to produce a lot of value-added products from food and kitchen waste and other organic waste. So again, circular economy kind of approach, trying to make hydrochar, which is to replace coal, then also like it could be biocoke. Can we make adsorbent, which could be used for water treatment or wastewater treatment. For the sludge, for the liquid after the processed water could be used for biogas production, which could be used as a biomethane. Then the sludge coming out would be used as a biofertilizer, then bioplastics, lactic acid, biopolymers. So a lot of, we have a group of three professors and several PhD students. We are kind of focused on different aspects of that, with close to maybe around 12 to 15 students doing PhD in different aspects of this. Then if you are interested to learn more about the water, wastewater, solid waste, liquid waste and all that, there are several courses on NPTEL SWAYAM platform offered by me and other professors as well. This course is running right now, Integrated Waste Management for a Smart City. The dates is for the last year. I did not change the poster for this year, but this is running. This just started 25th of July. So its course is running right now. There is a course on sustainable engineering and life cycle. There's a course on plastic waste. There's a course on e-waste. So just for, if some of you are interested, you can always, these courses are offered once a year. You can check on SWAYAM NPTEL platform and you will find it. If you have any difficulty finding it, let me know. I'll be happy to put you in the link so that you can get it. So this is my contact information. Of course, I'll take questions right now, but later on, if you want to get in touch with me, you can email me, easy to remember. Or you can also send me messages on, this number has WhatsApp. So if you want to connect on WhatsApp or all that, usually I do respond, like you may get a response sometimes within 24 hours, sometimes maybe 2-3 days, but you will definitely get a response. So thank you. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take.
Thank you, Dr. Dubey, for this very interesting and knowledgeable presentation. Now I would request Tikender ji, if you have some comments.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rajesh, I think for making this lovely presentation. And, you know, it's not just about water conservation, but, you know, how that conservation has to happen, the kind of pollutants and toxicity that Dr. Rajesh has mentioned. But you scare me, Dr. Rajesh, because I'm very fond of seafood and, you know, you know and that's apparently true. So I think, yeah, I think a very comprehensive approach, as you rightly pointed out. But I mean, this also reminds me, probably I've already said this in one of the webinars. you know, when you were placing the history of Earth and then the history of humankind, which is in few seconds, uh, in relation to the history of Earth. So there's a very interesting book by Tony Joseph, Who We Are. And I mean, there some of the scientists have pointed out that, you know, I mean, quite an inverse what you said. I mean, I don't agree with their formulation. But I mean, I completely agree with you that we have to be completely humble. They say, you know, the Mother Earth is so supreme, so objective, so superior that if you human beings think that you can spoil it, then you are completely mistaken. Yeah. Even if that is true, I don't buy that account. You know, the kind of environment that we have created, that doesn't give us an alibi to, you know, do the kind of the Holocaust that we are doing with nature. So yeah, but I agree. I mean, we have to be humble, and you know, this reminds me of Jan McCart, which I've already said. You know, designing with nature, planning with nature. And of course that, so thank you so much, Dr. Yes, this is the point that I wanted to make. And I think we can just jump over to the questions.
All right, sir. The first question is by Sunit Ji, and the question is in reference to a news that Sunit Ji has read. There are 152 districts in India where uranium is found. Please suggest if the same technologies are used for wastewater management such as MBR, MBBR, electrocoagulation would be enough to treat such contamination, or we would need something else to remove threats from such contamination by uranium.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about uranium, are you talking about water treatment, or in terms of, because the technology you're suggesting is for the wastewater. So wastewater, if uranium is showing up there, you will have to go for a tertiary treatment. This MBR, MBBR, electrocoagulation, they may not, as far as I know, unless it's very difficult to say that these technologies will not work at all. We cannot say that because it depends on in which combination you do. If you have some pre-treatment in the beginning where you have done something with this uranium, then it may work. But in general, if we say, we will have to go for a tertiary treatment. And that tertiary treatment, which takes either in the news article that you have listed, it talks about arsenic there as well. So I don't know whether, and then for uranium is also there. So it's you have to go for maybe RO kind of systems or something like that. I have to look at it more to kind of tell you exactly which system will be more useful. But I suspect that RO should be able to do that job. As I said, my contact information is there. If you can get in touch with me, I can look it up and tell you precisely what needs to be done. But as of now, I think that RO should do the job for you as a tertiary treatment.
Shobit Ji is asking, managing fresh water and extracting resources from wastewater may be the best solution. Can we produce hydrogen from wastewater? Can we make a microbial fuel cell which can give electricity for a small industry?
Yes, in fact, if you have followed IIT Kharagpur's research, one of my senior colleagues, Professor Makarand Bhangarekar, his entire research group is on microbial fuel cell. And we have demonstrated here, microbial fuel cell against the energy balance is still, in a small scale, it is working out to be okay, but to have a full-fledged MFC plant, we haven't reached that stage yet. There's a lot of research is happening. Hopefully we'll reach that stage, but what we have seen is for a low, like bioelectric toilet, we have made using bioelectrical systems, where we can take that sewage, we can produce electricity, and we use that electricity to at least, just from the one toilet, we could have electricity which can like put a light on and can even do the battery charging, like mobile charging. So those at a lower level, we have seen that, but to take it to a kind of a big plant, still work needs to be done. So answer is yes, but it will take time for you to really see a kind of bioelectrical system plant working in a larger scale in anywhere in the world. It's still work in progress. Some pilots are there.
Prakash is asking, you rightly talked about a silo-free holistic, design thinking oriented, nexus-based integrated approach to manage waste. What do you think could be done at local level, especially in the rapidly urbanizing areas, which are now hotspots of pollution of all sorts? How could an integrated approach be developed?
So say if you look at for a local area, even you look at for an urban center, if you are talking about particular city, even second level or third level city, where you for our municipal offices, unfortunately, the municipal offices are loaded with so much of work that they are always resource is stretched in terms of manpower and also in terms of physical infrastructure. But what we need to bring is the water department there, the wastewater department there, the solid waste department there. There has to be a coordination. Many times what happens is what the water department is doing, wastewater department doesn't know. Or so that needs to kind of go away. We need to bring a lot of coordination among these offices, the engineers, and the different executive engineers working. So they have to work more in team rather than doing their own things. So that's where we can possibly start, so that we take benefit of each other. Right now, the water group will come and they will do their stuff, and then the wastewater group is doing something else. And there's a lot of loss of resources also happens because you are actually duplicating works too. So that's where we can start. And then we also need to actually equip these engineers and junior engineers, supervisors, workers with knowledge. Unfortunately, the municipal system, we have some good engineers there, but what is happening in the world, how the technologies are changing, some vendors comes and then they show a very fancy presentation, and because vendors have to sell their product, isn't it? So they will show fancy presentation. That's they have to do their marketing. But to really understand that, so they need to. So if you look at some of the European countries or the American countries, they have what is known as the continuing education program, where these people has to be trained every year, or so there has to be like a set of training happening, where they are equipped with knowledge. Then they will take kind of decision, and in knowledge in terms of how to bring the holistic thinking as well. So because that's not easy, isn't it? It's very easy for us to deliver a lecture like that, and we kind of have a question. But doing things on the field requires a lot of coordination to get, and sometimes ego classes too. So we have to keep that into consideration. So maybe along that line we can go.
Manish Kumarji is asking, in comparison to municipal water quality and well water quality, where does rainwater harvesting stand?
Can you say that again? Municipal water quality
and well water quality.
So I forgot. So what? So in terms of municipal water, if you are getting a treated water, you will be it will be fine. Rainwater, as long as you are catching the rainwater typically we don't consume it directly. Isn't it? We don't take the rainwater and start drinking it. So we let it pass through a rainwater harvesting system, where basically we are using it to groundwater recharge. And if you are using it the groundwater recharge, we put a kind of filtration system in place. So we use the natural soil and the gravel and all those kind of stuff. So it passes. So there is a filtration system. Rainwater, unless it gets in touch with some of the chemicals, say if you have the system on the roof, you are collecting it. Unless you have contamination happening, it's more or less cleaner water. It may have some air pollutant, which is dissolved air pollutant in there, but other than that, it's relatively clean. And when it passes through that filtration system, the natural filtration system that we designed as part of the rainwater harvesting, it gets a cleaner water. So I would put it in more in line with what is the well water. Like the well water, it will be kind of similar to your well water. For municipal water, if you're getting a treated water supply, it's again, unless there is a contamination in the conveyance system, the municipal wastewater, the water supply network that you have. If you have some problem with the water supply network, then there could be an issue. Otherwise, water supply, if you're getting municipal water supply, it should be pretty much clean water for you. So that should be, I would say that might be slightly better than. It depends from place to place too. Like, in some places where what is there in the groundwater, what kind of contamination there in groundwater. So it will depend from that aspect. Yeah.
Vandana ji is asking, as you mentioned, only 30% sewage is treated in India. So my question is whether at house level, can we have a systems approach to solve this problem as a decentralized way, and how we can do that?
Yeah, so that's a very good question actually, and in fact that is already happening in this particular sector. With this, if you look at the big apartment complexes now, they are actually required also by the rule that they have to take this sewage and then treat it within their premises itself. And you may have seen, those of you who live in high-rise apartments with say 500 to 1,000 flats, you may have seen that there is a sewage system. Whatever the sewage comes from all these apartments goes to a system where it gets treated, and the treated water needs to be used within your premises itself, so that your demand for fresh water will go down, and that sludge that is produced can be composted further. So that's what rules suggest, rules require. So that kind of decentralized approach is being promoted by the rules, by the government programs too. So it's so that can be done. And I was telling you about the plant that we have in IIT Kharagpur as a demo plant. And if you come here, we will show you. We'll be happy to show you that. The intent was the same. So it was only 0.3 MLD, so it's like 300 KLD plant. So it's for a small town apartment complexes. So we can take the wastewater, treat it to all the way to almost as clean as your drinking water, and then you can use it for any purpose other than cooking and drinking. For as of now, because we haven't tested for pharmaceuticals and other things. When we test it for pharmaceuticals and others, then we can say whether we can drink it or not. But other things than that, it's and that was this project was funded by one of our alumni. He chipped in almost 2 crores for that. So the intent was again the same thing. They want to take this technology to this apartment complexes where this can be replicated over there. And what we have shown that you can treat it at a much cheaper price. So you will reduce your water bill by at least by 50%. So if you do this, you will reduce the apartment complexes water bill will reduce by at least 50%, if not more than 50%. So that much benefit you are going to get. So economically also it makes sense to do that.
Praveena ji is asking, can we develop MFC for industrial wastewater treatment? If yes, then kindly suggest the design and structure for it.
So that's a pretty long question. So I would say you can send me an email and at bkdubey@gmail.com, and then we can get back to you on that, because can you develop MFC? Answer is yes. Now, how to design and structure, that requires a lot of discussion. So probably not at this particular time. I would request you to send me an email and we'll send you some information on that. So what to do.
Shobit ji is asking, is water fluorination safe for human health?
It is, as long as you keep we have a safe dose of chlorine. So as long as you keep it below that dose level, you are okay. There should not be any problem.
So last question by Soumya ji. How can all the knowledge about plastic use and management, recycling and reuse can be passed to the local community in local language?
Yeah, that's a very good question again. In terms of plastic or waste management, or even in the sewage, we have to get into translated into local language. So how it can be done, we have to do it. So in terms of whenever we are designing our system or designing our program, there has to be a dedicated section of the program focused on kind of knowledge, what that is called the ICD program, like you are the communication strategy program that you have, where you have to communicate with the local people. So if I'm sitting in Bengal, in Kharagpur, actually, we'll probably need some Odia and Telugu too, because we have a lot of Odia people, we have a lot of Telugu people in Bengali, Hindi, English. So whatever training pamphlets or pamphlets for the households we prepare, we have to get it translated in these languages. And whenever we do this workshop, we have to do it in local languages too. So that's how it can be done. And in fact, I can give you an example that when we had a project from the city of Guwahati, and we developed the training program for that, and they are made the training program material also in SMS so that they can use in local language. So we have to convert these in local. Otherwise, see, we can come online and or we can join together in a 5-star hotel and talk in big English and but अगर किसी को कुछ समझ ही नहीं आया, कुछ अगर जिनको जानना था वो जाने ही नहीं इसको, तो फिर उसका कुछ फायदा नहीं होता. So that's why it has to be translated in the local language, and we have to take it to the people who are actually doing things on the ground. So it's a very good question, and probably that could be an approach to do.
Thank you, Dr. Dubey, for taking up all the questions. Now, I would request you to kindly conclude the session. So
again, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, IMPRI and other organization, NIDM, NHA and all that. I was going through the write-up of this particular 3-day training program. Quite impressive. A lot of people, I saw many of the familiar faces there too. In terms of giving lectures. I think my lecture was slightly different because I was asked to talk about on wastewater, and usually I try to put this holistic approach systems thinking in whenever I get a chance, because I think that these are very, very important things for people to know. So I hope it was useful for the participants, and again, thank you. And I will see you all in some other platform somewhere. I see Arjun in the audience, so he's a long time friend of mine. So thanks, Arjun, for remembering me again. So okay, I'll see you.
Thank you, sir, so much for being part of the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I would request our convener and moderator, Shri Tikender Ji, to conclude our second day of this training program with some words. So over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Sorvi, and we are already running past our time and exhausted almost. 1:30 we were supposed to finish off, so what to do. So I just want to make, a few points here. We all know, this has been repeatedly pointed out. Of course, first of all, thanks for all our participants and those who are presenting here with fabulous presentations, and though these presentations emanate not just from the professional experience, but also from very practical. Of course, practical is professional. There's a linkage between that. So I'm sure this will be a great learning for our participants, and that's why it's a kind of training program. And something will percolate, because percolation is very important even in rainwater conservation. So that percolation is something which we have plugged, and one of our speakers rightly pointed out that if the surface is impervious, then it's 50% that gets, the surface water that gets absorbed. Which you can retain, and if it's not, then it's 5%. So probably, so that percolation is something very important. Having said that, I think what is important is that we are aware of the fact that just 1% of the water is available. All the water that we have, we know water is more than the surface of the earth, but at the same time, and what is the availability of water for human consumption or for drinking purposes is a real challenge. And now this real challenge that we're talking about, what is important is the kind of interventions that have taken place in the last 200 years, 250 years. And why I'm completely obfuscated with this fact is, and this is an area which probably many of our presenters will not venture into that, but this is something very important, and that is, this history of industrial capitalism, which has actually commoditized our basic fundamentals of nature as well. It's not left Earth, and that's why we were talking about climate change, and therefore climate change and its impact on the human beings. But water has also been commoditized. So, water is also a kind of an entity for profitability. And so one element of all of this that we are discussing about water conservation is, going back bringing in our conventional knowledge, linking it with modern science, so that the way we have developed, we have built our towns, our cities, our nations, actually is quite an antithesis to the whole process or to the whole discussion that we're doing. Now, why I say this is an antithesis? Because firstly, because I mean, it's a kind of commodity. So, you know, if it's a commodity, we can jolly well understand what does that mean. But at the same time, you know, the way the land use change has happened, the way you know, and then one of the speakers when she was pointing out that the impervious surface, and if you see it, just have a look at the cities. I mean, I'm sure there was a presentation yesterday. Just a small fraction of city development planning. If one just reduces that, one will understand. And Gurgaon is a very classic example how this, you know, the private model of city building has completely usurped the water bodies there. And now we know, and it's not just Gurgaon, it's Delhi, it's all over the country, which is facing I mean, these issues. And as I pointed out earlier, Bioswales has also brought out the nuances of it, you know, in his book called The Asphalted City. So what needs to be done? I mean, what needs to be done is, I think, A, through these discussions, we intervene and we just create awareness. B, I think we require convergence. We require a definite shift and a definite disruption in the way we are planning things. And when I say shift and convergence, I think, as I told, I mean, as I was speaking earlier also, the left doesn't speak to the right. That means, you know, you have different bodies. I mean, you have the urban development, you have the Jal Shakti, so we find convergence of things happening in the policy framework. I think these would be serious challenges that we will continue to face in times to come. And when I say convergence, I think this also leads us to what forms of utilities, because you know, the Delhi Jal Board provides water to Delhi. Let's take the example of Delhi. I mean, you can name not with more than a dozen towns and cities in the country. Maybe if it's in a very underestimation, then not more than a score towns and cities in the country are completely responsible for, you know, for lifting of water and then, you know, recharging the services back again. So I think that responsibility, that onus, I mean, whether we create a single utility or we have multiple utilities, because in the towns the governance models are different. And we have seen how one part of the utility doesn't speak to another part of the utility. And Shimla, I mean, I was part of that. Is a very classical example where, you know, the government was providing water and the water was being distributed by the municipal corporation. And there was not even once the discussion about, you know, how we just recharge our aquifers. So that's the second thing. The third thing is, I go back to the process of city development, you know, the kind of concretization that is taking place, particularly in the mountain towns, be it Ladakh, Shimla, or be it any other part, Mussoorie, you know, where you had a manual of design, where you had a manual of engineering. And what, I mean, I go back to the imperviousness or, you know, embankments on stormwater drains. I mean, you see even funding from agencies like World Bank, Asian Development Bank, you find under the guise of beautification of the town. Beautification means you cover the drains. Beautification means you just concretize the drains so that the water gushes out. I think we have to revisit. We have to revisit those engineering aspects. Therefore, this convergence of city development process is, I think, what is very important. And then there were some instances here, but I think we have to little innovatively understand, you know, the large resident welfare associations. I mean, there's a study done in Delhi, for example. If Delhi is able to hold back its, you know, even 50% of the total rainfall that it has, and then it can meet almost 45 to 50% of its water demand throughout the year. Now, what? So Delhi moves to Yamuna, and now even Yamuna is like beyond capacity. So now Delhi is coming to my state. That's Himachal Pradesh. They're constructing a dam, Rainwater Dam, where they are, a large dam which will submerge large portion of the forests. Many trees would go. So I don't know where Himachal will go. And then once Rainwater Dam doesn't suffice, then we'll move another. So it's hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. So how long will we go? So, this whole concept has to be revisited. And it also goes into the consciousness of the people. As we were discussing about Singapore. So the consciousness is like, I remember a funny anecdote visiting the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, which used to be the Vice Regal Lodge. They have a very large water storage tank, very large. That can suffice them once it gets stored. It gets filled, can suffice for 3 months. But what is the consciousness? The consciousness is that this is not clean water. So they think the water that I get from my surface, rainwater, is not clean, but there's a cleaner water coming, which is 100 kilometers away. I think that has to go. So maybe we have to create those structures or standardization or whatever. So those disruptions, I think, need to be brought in. Lastly, what is important is when we are, understanding this, that's why I brought out the space and scope of state. This has to be in a very decentralized and democratic manner. And as one of our presenters pointed out, we do not even take women into consideration. So when we plan these utilities, or when we plan, our water designs, we do not even go back to the people. I think there is where the biggest problem lies at the present juncture. And I can share this experience from Leh, where I was instrumental into writing the vision document. Everyone, people and even experts were focusing that we should get glacier water, because that is how we get water through gravity. But, the engineers have now designed a scheme that they will lift water from. Whether it will suffice, whether it will work throughout the year is a big question mark. If you visit Leh, you find the kind of ppms on the particular matter that they have. It's not worth drinking as during the and in winters when the temperature is -25. Whether we'll have the capacity to even pump that is a big question mark. So I think this is a very interesting 3 days workshop that is taking place, where we are discussing design, where we are discussing policy, where we are discussing utilities, where we are discussing technology, and also where we are discussing people, because everything boils down to the people. How do we reach out to the conclusions? Maybe we will wait for tomorrow's presentation. And then, as I've said, it's not just a kind of exercise for our participants to learn, but also to have some kind of understanding, some kind of critical view of the way things are going, and what kind of disruptions are required, so that some policy interventions can be made. I think, thank you, Dr. Swadeep. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, sir, for your concluding remarks.
And sir, if you find some time tomorrow, please also discuss at length at the Shimla experience.
I will. I'm not time. I'm there. I'm there.
Remunicipalization and other. Okay.
Yes, because that's why I said utilities and all, because maybe tomorrow when we discuss, we'll do that.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir.
As we come to end of day 2 of a 3-day immersive online certificate training program on implementing rainwater conservation, practitioners' perspectives on rainwater harvesting and efficient local water governance and resilience. This training course is organized by National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, and Center for Environment, Climate Change, and Sustainable Development, or CECCSD, IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute. I, Sauravi Ghimire, researcher at IMPRI, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of CECCSD, Impact and Policy Research Institute, and National Institute for Disaster Management, or NIDM, Ministry of Home Affairs, India. We are grateful to our experts for the day 2 of this training, Dr. Fawzia Tarano, Ms. Anjali Makhija, and Dr. Brajesh Kumar Dubey. We thank the patron for the program, Shri Taj Hassan, convener and moderator, Shri Tikendra Singh Panwar, our conveners, Professor Dr. Anil K. Gupta, Dr. Simi Mehta, and Dr. Soumyadev Chattopadhyay. We thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively involved in today's deliberation. We welcome you tomorrow again on August 3rd for our last day of this excellent training course by distinguished experts, Shri V.R. Raman, Shri Ranjan Panda, and Professor Arun Kumar. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a good day and thank you.